In a smoky Viking Age longhouse by the Greyfjord, the year is measured in chores, whispered politics, and the quiet war for the warmest bench. Follow Liv, Owen, Bran, Eric, Hilda, Mara and Sten through winter smoke, spring repairs, summer runs and autumn harvest, where the real drama is never loud, but it is always close. Settle in, breathe slow, and let Ravenford prove that survival is mostly planning, patience, and a little well-placed sarcasm. Chapter 1. Winter Smoke and Shared Benches. The Longhouse at Ravenford had talent that never failed. It could take a cold night and turn it into a warmer, mostly by filling itself with people, animals and opinions until there was no room left for the cold to breathe. Smoke lived in the rafters like an uninvited cousin who arrived for a short visit and stayed all winter. The fire in the centre did its best, which was to say it burned wood with enthusiasm and sent the results upward in a soft brown ribbon. The roof vent let some of it out when the wind felt generous. When the wind did not, the smoke stayed and everybody pretended their eyes were watering because they were thinking deeply about their life choices. Eric Ravenford called it the breath of the house. He said it like it was poetry and not a practical warning. Liv, who had to wash soot out of cloth, called it what it was, smoke. The benches ran along the walls and they were less furniture and more geography. Where you sat told the house what you thought you deserved. The closer you were to the fire, the warmer you were and the more you could claim you were working. The farther you were, the more you practiced humility and the more you learned to sleep while wearing almost everything you owned. There was a bench space near the middle, not the best spot but good enough to feel like you mattered. It had been promised to Owen in the last autumn, back when Owen was still new and the harvest had everybody feeling optimistic and charitable and slightly delirious from hauling roots. Eric had said it loud enough for half the house to hear. Owen had taken it as a sacred vow carved into stone. Then winter arrived. Winter did not care about promises. Winter cared about real estate, and the Longhouse was full of it, occupied by bodies that had nowhere else to be. So Owen slept on the edge of a bench near the door, where the air was cold enough to keep cheese fresh. He did not complain loudly, because he wanted to be seen as tough. He complained quietly to anyone who happened to be near him, which was everyone, because the Longhouse was not a place where you could avoid other people unless you became a very committed broom. On the first morning of deep winter, Liv woke before most of the house, because Liv always woke before most of the house. If the Longhouse had a heartbeat, it followed her schedule. She stirred the coals and listened to the small cracker that meant the day had not unalived itself during the night. Hilda was already up, because Hilda did not sleep so much as pause. She sat by the loom with wool in her lap, fingers moving in the dim light like they had their own stubborn plan. "You are early," Liv said. "I am late," Hilda said. "The wool will not twist itself." Liv gave a slow nod, the kind you give to people who insist on wrestling time. She walked past the sleeping shapes and did the morning count without making it obvious. 2 goats near the far wall, heads tucked in like they were hiding from responsibility. A calf that had decided it belonged with people now. A dog that moved only enough to prove it still existed. Eric lay on his bench with his cloak pulled up, breathing with the satisfied rhythm of a man who believed the Longhouse would run itself out of respect. Father Alden lay near the fire because age earned privileges, and because he told stories that made the long nights feel shorter. He was awake too, eyes half open, watching the smoke like it might explain something if he stared long enough. Liv stepped carefully around Owen, who was curled near the door with his knees drawn up. He looked like he was trying to fold himself into a smaller problem. "If you keep sleeping like that," she said softly, "your bones will start to argue with you." "They already do," Owen whispered. "They have opinions." Liv almost smiled. Almost. She did not want to encourage him too much. Owen was eager in the way young men often were, like a dog that thinks every sound is a personal invitation. She handed him a small piece of bread, which he took with the gratitude of someone who was never sure when the next would happen. When the house began to wake, it did it slowly, like a bear rolling over and deciding it still hated everything. There were coughs, stretches, quiet groans, and the sound of someone stepping on something they should not have stepped on. Bran, the shipwright, rose from his bench and ran a hand through hair that had been flattened into a new shape by sleep. He blinked at the fire as if it had personally offended him. "Cold enough for you, Bran?" "It is never cold enough for those goats. They keep moving closer to the fire like they are paying rent." "They pay in milk," Liv said. "That is better than most." Eric finally sat up, slow and theatrical. Like a chieftain in a story, he stretched and looked around as if checking that the Longhouse had remained impressed in his absence. "Morning," he said. "Morning," everyone answered, in the tired tone of people who had been awake for days, despite it being a single morning. Eric looked toward Owen near the door. He frowned in the way that suggested he had almost remembered something important. "You still there, Owen?" Eric said. "I have not moved in weeks," Owen said. "If I move now, the floor might miss me." Eric nodded like that was reasonable. The nod was strong and confident. It did not fix the bench problem, but it did show leadership, which was apparently the same thing. The first work of the day was always the same: water, feed, sweep, scrape, and pretend the world was not frozen solid outside. The Longhouse was a small, warm island, but it was surrounded by a sea of cold that waited for any mistake. Liv directed people with a calm voice that did not rise, because it did not need to. She knew where every bucket was supposed to be. She knew which child had hidden a spoon. She knew how much dried fish remained in the stores, and how many days of winter still lay ahead like a long road. Hilda worked wool and listened, because she collected information the way other people collected firewood. Bran repaired a net that did not need repairing, because Bran liked doing things that made him look useful. Eric checked the door latch and declared it sturdy, which was a safe kind of work. Owen carried water and tried not to look resentful. He failed occasionally. His face would slip into a look that said, "I would like to be sleeping near the fire, and also, I would like everyone to know I deserve it." Father Alden watched all of it and said little. When he did speak, it landed like a pebble in a still pond. "You know, benches are like promises. They are softer than you think." Owen heard him and looked over. "Are you saying Eric lied?" "I am saying winter has a way of rearranging truth," Father Alden said. "Like smoke. It goes where it likes." Owen stared at the rafters, as if he might argue with smoke directly. By midday the light outside was thin and grey. The sun did not rise so much as appear briefly to prove it still existed. The wind pressed against the walls, testing them. The Longhouse held, because it had held for years and because everyone inside worked to keep it standing. Liv measured out stew in bowls, and the house gathered around it like hungry birds. The stew was mostly barley and dried meat, with just enough fat to make people believe in hope. As they ate, the topic returned, as it always did. "The bench," Owen said, and tried to sound casual, like he was mentioning the weather. Bran snorted. "The bench again. It was promised." He looked at Eric. Eric chewed slowly, buying time with food. "I said you could have it when we had room. You said you would make room." Eric frowned like he did not appreciate being pinned down by his own words. "I did not say that." Hilda lifted her bowl and sipped with the calm of a woman watching two roosters argue. "I remember you saying something, Eric." Eric looked betrayed. "You remember everything." "It is my burden." Liv set her bowl down with careful control. This was a familiar problem, like smoke. It did not leave, so you managed it. "Owen," Liv said, "you are helpful. We know this. Thank you," Owen said, hopeful. "But," Liv continued, "you are also loud. That is not a crime, but it is not a reason to get the best bench either." Owen opened his mouth. Eric lifted a hand. "Let us not make it heavy. We are all cramped. We all suffer." Bran muttered, "Some of us suffer with dignity." Hilda said, "You suffer with tar on your hands." Bran looked offended. "Tar is honourable. Tar is sticky. Honour is optional." The tension softened because humour was a tool in the Longhouse just like an axe. It kept problems from getting too sharp. After the meal, work returned. Repairing clothes, scraping hides, twisting rope, and checking the stores like checking a wound. Outside, the cold kept pressing. In the afternoon, a traveller arrived. It was not common in deep winter. The roads were rough, the sea was hard, and only a certain kind of stubborn person tried to move through a world that wanted them to sit down and stay put. The traveller pushed open the door and stepped into the smoky warmth, bringing a gust of cold air and the smell of snow. He was wrapped in a cloak that had seen better days and carried a pack that looked heavier than his good sense. Everyone watched him, because strangers were news. He nodded once and looked around, eyes squinting in the smoke. "Peace to this house," he said. "Peace," Eric answered, because Eric liked being the one to say it. Liv approached because Liv liked knowing what problem had just walked in. The traveller introduced himself as Gareth of Stonebridge, a place that sounded respectable. He said he had been travelling to see kin and had been pushed off the road by weather and by his own poor planning. "We have room," Eric said, already generous with what did not belong to him. "We have floor," Liv corrected. Gareth looked relieved anyway. He accepted a bowl of stew and sat near the fire because everyone knew where a traveller belonged. The Longhouse did not have many rules, but it had instincts. As Gareth ate, his shoulders relaxed. He began to talk, because people talk when they are warm. He mentioned a storm that had taken a roof off a barn 2 days north. He mentioned a herd lost in deep snow. He mentioned that some men had been seen moving along the shore at night, not from Ravenford, not from any nearby hamlet. Bran raised his head. "Moving where?" "Along the old path by the rocks," Gareth said, "carrying packs." Quiet. Eric's eyes narrowed. Quiet men are rarely bringing gifts. Father Alden spoke from his place by the fire, or they are bringing trouble they do not want to pay for. Liv watched Gareth carefully. "What kind of packs?" "Heavy ones," Gareth said. "Like tools, or silver. Hard to tell in the dark." The Longhouse went still for a moment. The fire cracked softly. The goats shifted. Owen looked toward the tool chest near the wall. It was a sturdy chest, bound with iron, a shared treasure of the household. It held the things that made work possible, and work was the only true magic. Bran stood and crossed the room. He knelt by the chest and flipped the latch. The lid creaked open. He stared inside. Then he went very still. Liv stepped closer. "What is it?" Bran's voice was quiet, almost polite. "Someone has taken the caulking iron." A small silence followed, heavy and careful. Owen said, "That is the thing you use for the ship seams." Bran looked at him with a tired expression. "Yes, that is the thing." Eric stepped forward, the weight of leadership settling on him like a cloak. "Who took it?" No one answered. Of course no one answered. Ravenford had many skills, but confession was not dot of them. Hilda leaned forward to look in the chest. She frowned. "Also the whetstone is gone." "The good you." Father Alden sighed. "That is almost worse." Liv looked around the Longhouse, eyes steady. "This is not a joke." Noah laughed. Not even Owen. Eric lifted his chin. "We will sort this. Quietly. No shouting." Bran's mouth tightened. Quiet does not bring back tools. Eric gave him a look. Shouting does not either. Gareth shifted, uncomfortable. "I did not mean to bring worry." "You brought information," Liv said. "That is always worry, but it is useful." The evening settled in with the missing tool hanging over everyone like smoke that would not find the vent. People worked, but their hands moved slower. Eyes kept drifting toward each other. Owen sat near the door again, colder than he deserved and more awake than he wanted. He watched the shadows and listened to the wind. He also listened to the soft whispers that moved along the benches like mice. Hilda murmured to Liv later, "Someone took it for a reason." Liv replied, "Everything is taken for a reason. The question is if the reason will be returned with it." Eric tried to calm the house with certainty, which was one of his favourite tools. "Nobody here would steal from us," he said. Father Alden coughed, which might have been laughter. "Nobody would admit it," he said. "Those are different things." Night came, the fire dimmed. People wrapped in cloaks and settled into their places. The traveller Gareth was given space near the warmth. Owen was still near the door. Before sleep, Father Alden began a story. because stories were the Longhouse way of tying the day together and hoping the knots held. He spoke of a winter long ago when a man lost his best knife and accused everyone until the knife turned up in his own boot. The moral was not subtle. The Longhouse listened anyway. As Father Alden's voice smoothed the edges of the night, Liv stared into the fire and planned. A caulking iron had to be found. Spring would come whether they were ready or not, and a ship with open seams was just a floating argument. Owen lay down and tried to sleep. He thought about the missing tool. He also thought about the missing bench he had been promised. In the Longhouse, missing things had a way of turning into bigger things. The smoke curled above them, the wind pressed against the walls. The Longhouse held its breath, warm and crowded, waiting for morning, and for whoever had decided to borrow the future. Chapter 2: Deep Winter and the Longhouse Court. The next day began with the same smoke, the same cold beyond the walls, and the same people pretending this was normal life and not a long test designed by someone with a sharp sense of humour. Liv woke early again because the world did not arrange itself kindly for those who slept in. She stirred the coals and listened for the small friendly cracker that meant the house would have heat before it had arguments. Arguments arrived anyway, they always did. Heat just helped people argue with more energy. By breakfast, everyone knew the caulking iron was missing, and everyone had an opinion about what should happen next. The Longhouse became a court without meaning to. No one put on special clothing, no one announced a formal meeting. People simply gathered near the fire and started speaking like the air itself demanded testimony. Eric stood with his hands on his hips, which was his way of letting everyone know he was in charge without needing to do anything complicated. He looked serious because he had practiced it. "We will find it," he said. "We will do it calmly." Bran folded his arms. Calmly is how you lose a second tool. Hilda sat with her wool and watched faces. "The culprit will reveal themselves," she said, "if we talk long enough. No one can stay silent forever." Father Alden murmured, "That is not true. Some men have made a whole life out of it." Owen stepped forward, unable to stop himself. "This is not just any tool. Without it, the ship cannot be sealed right." Bran pointed at Owen. "At least the cold boy knows one thing." Owen flushed, though it was hard to tell in the firelight. "I know more than one thing." Bran raised an eyebrow. "Name a second." Liv stepped between them without raising her voice. "Enough! We are not here to measure who knows what. We are here to fix what is broken." Eric nodded, grateful for the rescue. "Liv has the right of it. We will search." Hilda tilted her head. "Search where? In a longhouse full of people and animals and smoke. We will find it in spring." "We will find it now," Bran said. He looked at the benches like he might start lifting them. Eric made a calming motion that did not calm anyone. "We will start with questions. Who used it last?" Silence. Bran's jaw tightened. "I did. Yesterday. I put it back. I always put it back." Owen said, "You always say you put things back." Bran glared. "Because I do," Hilda said softly. "People who always put things back rarely announce it that much." Bran looked offended. "It is called pride." "It is called suspicion," Hilda said. Eric rubbed his forehead as if the smoke had moved into his skull. "All right, no more teasing. This is serious." Liv watched the door. If someone took it to trade, it is already gone. That word, trade, made the room tighten. Ravenford traded when it had to, and it traded honestly when it could. A stolen tool was not just missing iron. It was a crack in trust, and trust was the one thing keeping the Longhouse from becoming a pile of separate grudges. Eric addressed everyone. "If you took it for a reason, speak now. We will handle it." No one spoke. Father Alden said, "Notice how generous he is when he does not know the answer." Eric threw him a look. "This is not helping." Father Alden replied, "It is keeping you honest. That helps." Liv began organizing the search because talking was turning into a hobby and the firewood supply was not endless. She sent 2 people to check the storage racks. She sent someone to check the work shed. She told Owen to check near the boats, because Owen was eager and also because sending him outside was a useful way to cool his temper. Owen did not mind. Outside, at least, the air was clear. It was also sharp enough to slice bread. He wrapped his cloak tight and stepped into the pale winter light. The world outside was quiet in the way only snow can make it quiet. The sea lay dark and heavy, moving slowly. The shoreline rocks wore caps of ice. Owen walked toward the boats pulled up on the shore. He checked under tarps and behind stacked wood. He found nothing but frozen rope and a fish smell that had lodged itself into the sand months ago and refused to leave. He checked the small shed where nets were stored. He saw signs of recent footsteps in the snow. But there were always footsteps. A longhouse was a machine. It made tracks. As he searched, his mind kept circling back to the bench promise. He hated that it mixed with the missing tool, but it did. Everything in a longhouse mixed. Hunger mixed with pride, sleep mixed with resentment, even smoke mixed with hair until everyone smelled like the same shared life. When Owen returned, his cheeks were red from wind and frustration. Nothing, he said. Inside, the others reported the same. Nothing in the shed, nothing in the racks, nothing in the straw. Bran said, "That means someone has it on their person." That made everyone shift. Suddenly cloaks felt heavier. Pouches felt more suspicious. Even the goats looked guilty. Eric raised his hands. "We are not going to strip each other in front of the fire. We will not turn into animals." Liv said, "We already share a roof with animals. That is not the insult you think it is." Eric sighed. "Then what?" Hilda leaned closer, voice calm. "We do what we always do. We wait and we watch. A thief cannot use a caulking iron without someone noticing. It is not a subtle tool." Bran muttered, "Neither is my temper." Father Alden said, "Your temper is subtle like a hammer." The day continued, because winter did not pause for missing tools. People still had to eat. Animals still had to be cared for. The fire still had to be fed. The longhouse was not a place where you could stop living just because trust had a bruise. Liv moved through tasks with steady hands. She kneaded dough and measured grain and told children to stop poking the goat, because the goat would eventually take that personally. She also watched faces. Eric tried to be helpful. He carried wood. He checked the door latch again. He asked people if they were doing well, which made them look at him like he had asked if the sky was still up there. Bran worked on a wooden plank, shaping it for a future repair. His hands moved with skill. His mouth did not stop. "If the ship leaks in spring," he said, "I will not be the one blamed." Hilda said, "You will be blamed. You are always blamed. It builds character." Owen listened, torn between annoyance and admiration. Bran could make a ship move over water. Owen could carry water over snow. They were different skills, but both felt important when your hands were cold. That night, the longhouse gathered again. Not because anyone loved meetings, but because darkness made people want answers. The fire was brighter, the smoke thicker, and the mood sharper. Eric began, "We have searched. We have not found it. We must keep the peace." Bran said, "Peace does not seal planks." Bran lifted a hand, as if surrendering. "Fine. I will be quiet. I will be quiet as the missing iron." Hilda's eyes moved over the benches. Gareth the Traveller sat near the fire, looking smaller than he had the night before. He kept his hands close to his bowl. Hilda asked him gently, "Gareth, you said you saw men on the shore. Did you see their faces?" "No," he said quickly. "It was dark. They moved fast." Eric said, "Did they look like they were from here?" Gareth hesitated. "I do not know. One of them walked with a limp." "A limp," Father Alden repeated, and his eyes narrowed like he was reading a familiar line in a story. Bran said, "There are not many limps in Ravenford." Owen thought of old Rolf, who had a stiff leg from a fall years back. Rolf was not in the longhouse now. He had his own small hut nearer the woods. He did not share the main bench life. He also did not share the tool chest, at least not officially. Liv spoke quietly. "Rolf is kin to someone here. Someone might have lent him something." Hilda said, "Or sold him something." Eric frowned. "We do not accuse without proof." Father Alden said, "We are not accusing, we are noticing. There is a difference, and it is the only thing keeping us civilized." Eric looked like he wanted to argue, then decided not to, which was a rare moment of wisdom. Liv made a decision. "Tomorrow," she said, "we will visit Rolf. We will bring food, we will bring kindness, and we will bring a careful eye." Bran nodded once. "And if the iron is there," Liv looked at him, "then we take it back, without drama." Bran's expression said he did not enjoy that part, but he agreed, because Liv's calm was the kind of calm that could move mountains by simply refusing to be impressed by them. That night, after most had settled down, Owen lay near the door again. The air there was cold and clear, and he could hear the wind outside like the world scraping its nails along the walls. Father Alden shifted near the fire and spoke softly, not to the whole house, but to the darkness. "The worst part of winter," he said, "is not the cold. It is the way it turns small things into tests." Owen whispered back, "I do not want to fail." Father Alden's voice stayed gentle. "Then do not. Do the next right thing, even if it is boring, even if it does not earn you a better bench. The Longhouse remembers." Owen stared into the dim. "Does it?" "It does," Father Alden said, "and it forgets too. But it remembers long enough to matter." The next morning came with hard frost and a sky the colour of old iron. Liv packed a small bundle of food, because you never showed up at someone's door empty-handed unless you wanted your visit to turn sour. Eric came with her because he wanted to look responsible. Bran came because he wanted the tool. Owen came because he could not stand to stay behind. They walked through snow that crunched underfoot, the sound sharp in the still air. The trees stood bare and quiet. The world looked peaceful, which was a trick winter liked to play. Rolf's hut sat near the edge of the woods, smoke rising from a small hole in the roof. When they approached, a dog barked once, then decided it was too cold to care. Rolf opened the door slowly. He looked older than most winters, and his stiff leg kept him leaning on a stick. His eyes flicked over them, reading the purpose in their faces like it was written in bold. "Morning, Rolf," Liv said. "We brought food." Rolf grunted. "That is the best kind of morning." Eric tried to sound friendly. "We are checking in, making sure you are well." Rolf's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You do not visit just to check what is missing." Bran stepped forward. "The caulking iron." Rolf's eyes narrowed. He looked past them, toward the sea, as if hoping the tool might return on its own out of shame. Then he said, "I have not taken your iron." Liv studied him. "Have you seen it?" Rolf hesitated. Then he nodded once, slow and careful. "I saw it yesterday." Bran's voice sharpened. "Where?" Rolf sighed. "A man came to my door, offered to trade. He said he had a tool that could help me fix my roof vent. He showed me the iron." Eric's face tightened. Who was this man? Rolf looked down at his stiff leg like the question weighed on it. "He was from your longhouse," Rolf said. "I did not like it, but I needed what he offered. Winter does not care about pride." Liv asked, "What did you trade?" Rolf's voice went quiet. "A small bag of dried fish, 2 bundles of good wool, and a promise." Bran barked a laugh that had no humour. "A promise. That is what started all this." Owen's stomach dropped. A promise could mean anything. A promise could mean bench space. A promise could mean favour. A promise could mean silence. Liv kept her voice calm. "Rolf, where is the iron now?" Rolf swallowed. "I told him no. I told him it was not right. He left with it." Eric asked, "Which man?" Rolf did not answer right away. His eyes moved back to them, and his face tightened with the strain of choosing between peace and truth. Then he said, "It was Sten." The name landed like a heavy stone. Sten was part of the Longhouse, not close to the fire, not near the door either. Always in the middle of things, always helpful in a way that made it hard to pin down what he truly did. Bran looked ready to burst into flame. Sten, that sly fox. Liv held up a hand. "We will handle this at home." Eric nodded, jaw clenched. "Thank you, Rolf. We are sorry you were pulled into this. Rolf waved a hand weakly. Winter pulls everyone. Bring me my wool back if you can. It was good wool. Liv gave a small nod. We will try. They walked back through the snow with heavier thoughts than before. Owen's mind spun. Sten had been near the benches. Sten had been near the tool chest. Sten had also been one of the men who laughed when Owen spoke of his promised bench, as if promises were entertainment. Back in the Longhouse, the air felt tighter, as if the walls had heard the name already. Liv did not shout. She did not announce a public trial. She simply walked to where Sten sat and looked at him with the kind of quiet that made lies feel loud. Sten, she said, we need to talk. Sten smiled, small and practiced. About what? About the corking iron, Liv said. Sten's smile faltered. I do not know what you mean. Bran stepped forward, eyes bright with anger. You know exactly what she means. Eric raised his hands again, trying to keep things from turning into a storm. Sten, we have information. Do not make this harder. Sten looked around, eyes scanning for support. The Longhouse stared back, silent, watching. Even the goats seemed interested. Father Alden spoke from near the fire, voice calm as ever. The house is quiet now, Sten. That is the sound of your last chance to be wise. Sten swallowed. His shoulders sagged a little. Fine, he said. I took it. Bran exhaled like he had been holding his breath for days. Where is it? Sten looked down. I traded it. Liv's eyes narrowed. To whom? Sten hesitated. Then he said, a man from the coast road. He said he would bring me a whetstone and a small blade. He said he had silver too. Eric's voice grew colder. And why did you need those? Sten's face hardened. Because I am tired of being nothing. Because I do the work and still I sit where I sit. Because Owen comes in and gets promises and I get smoke. Owen flinched. He had not expected his name to be used like a club. Liv spoke carefully. So you stole from the house to improve your place in it? Sten's eyes flashed. It was not stealing, it was borrowing. It was trade. Bran's laugh was sharp. It was stealing. The word does not change because you dislike it. Father Alden sighed. It is always the same story. A man thinks his hunger is special. Liv took a slow breath. Sten, you will help fix what you broke. You will find a way to replace what you traded. You will work for it, and until then you will sit near the door. Owen's eyes widened. That is my place. Liv looked at him. It is a place. It is not yours, it is the house's. Today it belongs to Sten. Sten's face went pale, near the door. Eric said, that is the consequence. You wanted to move up, you moved out instead. The Longhouse stayed quiet, not triumphant, not cruel, just steady. This was how a household survived, not by perfect people, but by shared limits. Bran stepped back, still angry, but less wild. We need the iron, he said. We will get it back, Liv said. If we can. If not, we will make do. We always do. That night the Longhouse felt slightly different. The smoke still curled overhead. The fire still warmed. But the air carried a lesson. Promises could tempt. Tools could vanish. Pride could sneak into a chest and walk off with iron. Owen settled near the door again. Sten sat even closer to it, the cold biting his cloak. Owen felt a strange mix of satisfaction and pity, which was an uncomfortable feeling because it meant he was growing up. Father Alden began a story again, because stories were how they put trouble to bed. He told of a man who tried to cheat his neighbours and ended up paying twice, once in goods and once in respect. The moral was gentle but clear, like a candle in smoke. As the Longhouse drifted towards sleep, Liv watched the benches. She did not smile, but her shoulders eased a little. The house had chosen order over chaos. That was enough for what winter day. Outside, the wind shifted. Somewhere beyond the walls, the road waited with its secrets. Somewhere, a trader carried a tool that belonged to Ravenford. Inside, the Longhouse held together, not because it was perfect, but because it refused to fall apart just to satisfy someone's pride. Chapter 3. Late Winter, Hay Math, and Slow Hope. Late winter in Ravenford had a special kind of patience. It was not the noble kind. It was the kind that sat on your chest and waited for you to make a mistake. The Longhouse woke to a cold morning that looked exactly like yesterday. The smoke rose, the fire warmed, and the benches held their usual politics. The only difference was that Sten now lived at the edge of the doordraft like a man who had offended the wind personally. Owen did not know how to feel about that. Part of him enjoyed the justice. Another part of him disliked having a neighbour in misery, because misery was loud even when it tried to be quiet. Sten kept his cloak tight and his eyes down. He said little. The Longhouse said little back. That might have been mercy. It might have been waiting. The difference was hard to tell in winter. Liv ran the household like she always did. Steady as a stone in a river, she did not glare at Sten every minute. She did not give speeches. She just assigned work in a way that made it clear Sten would be paying for his choices until the debt felt real. Eric tried to look firm about it, which for him meant he stood with his hands on his hips and nodded at important moments. Bran, meanwhile, carried his anger like a spare axe. He did not swing it, he just liked holding it. Without the caulking iron, every mention of spring felt like an insult. Bran still repaired nets and shaped planks, but his mind lived in the ship seams, the places where water would find its way in, and laughed. Father Alden watched the whole thing with the calm of a man who had seen too many winters to be surprised by any of this. He was kind, but not soft. Winter had already done that job. Hilda worked wool and gathered news from Silence. If Silence had a price, Hilda could tell you the rate. Late winter was the season of hay math. Hay was not just food, it was time. It was survival folded into dry grass. It was the difference between animals standing in spring and animals not standing at all. Liv took the hay store count seriously. She counted bundles the way some people counted blessings, carefully and with suspicion. "Eric," she said one morning, "we have enough hay if we stop pretending the calf is a hungry king." The calf lifted its head as if it understood and disagreed. Eric looked at it. "It is growing. So are our problems," Liv said. "Feed it what it needs, not what it wants," Bran muttered. "If we fed people like that, half the Longhouse would starve." Hilda said, "Half the Longhouse already believes it is starving. It is a hobby." Owen carried hay to the animals and tried to not think about bench promises. It was difficult, because promises were like splinters. They stayed under the skin until you did something about them, and doing something usually hurt. As he worked, he watched Sten. Sten hauled water without complaint. Sten chopped wood until his hands cracked. Sten shoveled waste out of the byre area and did not gag, which was a small personal victory. Sten looked like a man trying to earn back a place without asking for it. Owen expected to feel superior. He did not. He felt annoyed, because empathy was inconvenient. One afternoon, Liv handed Owen a small bundle of cloth strips and a needle. "What is this?" Owen asked. "Your new assignment," Liv said. "Fix the torn mittens." Owen stared at the cloth. "I am not a woman." Liv blinked once. "I did not ask what you are. I asked what you can do." Owen opened his mouth, then closed it. He sat down near the fire, close enough to warm his fingers, and began stitching with the focus of a man trying not to be humbled by thread. Hilda watched him, amused. "Look at you," she said. "Becoming useful in new ways?" Owen kept his eyes on the mitten. "I am useful in old ways too." "Yes," Hilda said. "Carrying buckets and making noise." Owen looked up. "Why are you always like this?" Hilda smiled gently. "Because it is winter. Someone has to keep us awake." Father Alden added from his place near the fire, "And because she is correct." Owen went back to stitching. The Longhouse did not reward pride. It rewarded usefulness. Sometimes it rewarded stubbornness too, but mostly usefulness. As the days passed, the missing caulking iron remained missing. Sten admitted he had traded it to a man from the coast road, but he could not name the man. He claimed he did not know, that he was not thinking clearly, that he had been hungry for respect. Bran did not accept any of those reasons as helpful. "You traded our spring," Bran said to Sten one evening. "You traded our ship for your feelings." Sten's voice was quiet. I traded for a whetstone and a blade. I was going to bring something back. You brought back nothing, Bran said. That is the part I dislike. Liv stepped in before the fire turned into shouting. Bran, she said, we need calm. Bran stared at her. Calm does not seal planks. Liv stared back. Rage does not either. Sit down. Bran sat down, but he did it like a man sitting on a problem. Eric tried to soothe things with hopeful words. The tool will return, he said. Things have a way of coming back around. Father Alden said, so do consequences. We are living proof. That night, the wind grew louder and snow began again, a soft, steady fall that made the world feel smothered. Inside, the longhouse felt smaller. The smoke hung lower. People coughed and joked about it, because joking was easier than complaining. In the middle of the night, the calf stood and made a noise that sounded like the beginning of an argument. Liv woke instantly. She moved to check the animals, because if animals were restless, it meant something. Cold, hunger, discomfort, or simply the desire to ruin everyone's sleep. It was always one of those. The calf was fine. The goats were fine. The dog opened one eye and decided to remain bored. Liv returned to her bench and lay down again, but she stayed awake for a while, thinking. Late winter was the time when you planned spring, because if you did not plan it, it would arrive and step on you. By morning the snow had stopped, and the sky held a pale light that looked almost gentle. Almost. Liv called a small household talk after breakfast. Not a formal gathering, just a moment near the fire where everyone could hear her. We will need extra hands for spring repair and field thaw, she said. We will not wait until the mud arrives to start acting surprised. Bran nodded, grateful to hear the word repair used like it mattered. Eric said, we will be ready. Hilda said softly, we are never ready. We simply run anyway. Liv continued, Sten will work under Bran for the first weeks of repair. He will learn what he risked. He will also earn replacement value. Sten's face tightened, but he nodded once. Yes. Owen felt a strange sting of unfairness. Sten gets a better place near the shipwork, he thought. Sten gets purpose. Owen got mittens. Then Liv looked at Owen. Owen, she said, you will help Bran too. Owen blinked. Me. Yes, Liv said, you are quick. You can carry and learn, and perhaps you can spend less time thinking about benches. A small laugh moved through the longhouse, not cruel, just familiar. Owen's cheeks warmed. I do not think about benches, he lied. Father Alden said, the bench thinks about you. Eric tried to sound wise. If you want a better bench, earn it, do not demand it. Owen wanted to say that he had been promised it. He swallowed the words. Promises felt fragile after Sten's confession. A promise was only as strong as the person holding it, and even strong people got bent by winter. Later, when Owen was carrying water, he passed Sten by the door. Sten spoke quietly so only Owen could hear. I did not take your bench. Owen stopped. That was not what I asked. Sten's eyes were tired. I know. But I know you think it. Owen looked at him. I think you took from all of us. Sten nodded once. Yes. They stood in the draught for a moment, both cold, both uncomfortable. Why, Owen asked, not loud, not angry, just honest. Why did you do it? Sten's mouth twisted. Because I wanted to be seen. Because I was tired of being the man who carries and never leads. Because I thought a better blade would make me a better man. Owen stared, and did it. Sten's voice turned bitter. It made me a colder man by the door. That is what it made. Owen did not know what to say, so he did what Liv would do. He nodded and moved on. Winter did not give you time to solve every heart problem. Winter gave you chores. As late winter dragged on, small signs of change began to appear. The daylight lingered a little longer, the snow crust softened on the edges, ice on the shoreline cracked and shifted, sounding like the world stretching after a long sleep. Bran grew restless. He walked to the boat shed more often. He ran his hands over the planks, checking for weakness, talking to the wood like it might respond. Without the caulking iron, he planned workarounds. He considered making a new one, which was possible but difficult. Iron was not magic, but it was not cheap either. Hilda teased him what afternoon. You look like a man waiting for a lover. Bran frowned. I am waiting for spring. Same thing, Hilda said. Both arrive late and make you suffer first. Father Alden listened and smiled faintly. There is a reason the old songs love spring. It is the season that makes us forget winter was trying to break us. Eric nodded. We will fix the ship, we will plant the fields, we will fish the runs, we will trade, we will do everything. Liv glanced at him. You will do some things. You will also stay out of the way sometimes. That will be helpful too. Eric looked offended, then decided not to argue, which was another rare moment of wisdom. At night, the Longhouse settled into its rhythm. The fire, the smoke, the coughs, the quiet talk. Owen stitched mittens until his fingers were sore, then practiced knots in rope because he did not like feeling slow. Father Alden told stories that made everyone feel less trapped. He spoke of summers that were bright, of journeys that were long, of markets where people argued over price like it was a sport. He kept his voice low and steady, a blanket over the sharp edges of worry. Near the end of one story he said, "The house survives not because it is strong, it survives because we keep showing up." Owen listened and felt something loosen inside him. He still wanted the promised bench. He still felt the cold near the door. But he also began to understand that warmth was not always a place. Sometimes it was purpose. Late winter held on for a few more nights. Then, morning, the snow on the roof slid slightly, and water dripped in a thin line down the wall. It was annoying. It was also hopeful. Liv watched the drip and said, "Spring is coming, even if it is rude about it." Bran nodded. "Good. Let it come. I have words for it." Chapter 4. Spring Ship Repair and Fields Thawing. Spring arrived the way it always did in Ravenford, slowly, then all at once, like a guest who spent weeks knocking and then finally walked in without wiping their boots. The first real thaw turned the yard into a careful disaster. Snow became water, water became mud, mud became the ruler of all things. Every step had weight, every boot had a new personality. Eric stepped outside, sank to his ankle, and looked offended. "This is unfair," he said. Liv stepped around him without sinking as much, which was almost insulting. "It is spring," she said. "Spring is always unfair." Inside, the Longhouse smelled different. The smoke still lived in the rafters, but there was also dampness, and the faint clean smell of earth waking up. People opened the door more often, which let in cold air but also let out the heavy winter mood. Work changed overnight. Winter work was about enduring. Spring work was about racing. Bran called for ship repair as soon as the ground could hold a person without swallowing them entirely. The longship lay pulled up on the shore, covered in a tarp that looked tired. It had carried people and cargo before. It would carry them again if they did not embarrass themselves. Without the caulking iron, Bran approached the ship like a man who had to cook without a pot. He could do it, but he would complain loudly so everyone understood the scale of his suffering. Liv organized teams. She assigned Owen and Sten to Bran, because consequences and learning made a good pair. She assigned others to clear fields, repair fences, and drag out tools that had been sleeping all winter. Hilda moved between work groups like a quiet messenger, carrying small bundles of thread, bits of food, and large amounts of information. She knew who was working hard and who was pretending. She also knew who had been kind to Sten and who had not, which would matter later, even if no one admitted it. Owen met Bran at the shore with a bundle of rope and a stubborn mood. Bran pointed at the ship. "We start with cleaning and checking seams." Owen nodded. "What about the missing iron?" Bran's mouth tightened. "We will work around it until it returns, or until I forge a new one out of spite." Sten stood behind Owen, quiet and tense. He carried a bucket of warm water and rags. His hands were already raw from winter work. Bran looked at him. "You. Do not touch anything sharp unless I tell you." Sten nodded. Yes, Owen almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then he remembered the missing tool and decided to keep his sympathy on a short leash. They pulled off the tarp and the ship revealed its weathered back, planks darkened by sea and time. Bran ran his hand along the hull, feeling for gaps and weakness. He spoke softly, as if the ship might hear and feel embarrassed. "We will not let you leak," he murmured. "Not if I can help it." Owen said, "The ship cannot hear you." Bran looked at him. "It can hear disrespect." Owen went quiet. They worked through the morning, scraping away old tar, cleaning seams, checking rivets. Bran explained each step with the tone of a man who needed everyone to know he was the only reason this would succeed. Sten listened closely. Owen listened too, but Owen also watched how Bran's hands moved, how he judged the wood, how he used simple tools like they were extensions of thought. When noon came, Liv brought food down to the shore. She set out bread and dried fish and a small pot of broth. She stood watching them work. "How goes it?" she asked. Bran did not look up. "Slow. Because someone traded my iron away like it was a spare spoon." Liv looked at Sten. Sten stared at the sand. Liv said, "We will find a replacement, or make a, or borrow from a neighbour with better morals." Bran finally looked up. "Borrowing is fine, as long as it comes back." Owen chewed slowly. He felt the spring energy in his bones, the restless need to do more, be more. He wanted to prove he deserved better than the door draft. He also wanted to prove he could be part of ship work, which felt like real life, not surviving. After food, Liv returned to the fields. The snowmelt had exposed ground that looked exhausted, like it had been holding its breath all winter. The first task was clearing stones, checking the fence line, and deciding where to plant. Eric joined her with a shovel and a brave smile. "I will help," he said. Liv looked at him. "You will not hurt yourself," she said. Eric looked offended. "I am strong." Liv nodded. "Yes. Strong and dramatic. Take the lighter work." Eric took the lighter work, which in spring still meant heavy work, just less likely to turn into a story about a man and his back. Hilda came to the field line and watched them for a moment. "The ground looks like it does not want us," she said. "The ground never wants us," Liv replied. "We convince it anyway." As the days warmed, small green hints appeared at the edges, stubborn little shoots that looked like the earth was testing if it was safe to hope. Birds returned, louder than anyone wanted at dawn. In the Longhouse, bedding was shaken out. Cloaks were aired. People argued over whose turn it was to carry water now that the river path was muddy and slippery. Owen worked with Bran every day. He learned how to watch seams, how to mix tar, how to keep tools clean. He also learned that ship repair was not a single heroic act. It was 1,000 small choices that had to be made correctly, over and over, while your hands were cold and your patience was thinner than rope. Sten worked too. He did not complain, he did not argue. He did what Bran told him, and when Bran spoke sharply, Sten accepted it like rain. That did not make Owen like him, but it made Owen respect him in the way you respect a man carrying heavy loads without whining. One afternoon, as they scraped the hull, a figure appeared on the shoreline path. She walked with the ease of someone who had travelled often. Her cloak was well made, her boots practical, and her pack looked heavy with trade. She paused at the edge of the work and surveyed the scene like she was counting the number of problems before deciding which ones were worth her time. Liv arrived soon after, because Liv always arrived when something changed, as if the Longhouse sent her an invisible message. The woman nodded once. "Liv Ravenford," she said. Liv's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mara," Liv said. "You are early." Mara smiled. "I am always early. It is how I avoid disappointment." Eric stepped forward, trying to look welcoming and important. "Welcome to Ravenford." Mara glanced at him. "Thank you," she said, in a tone that suggested she was thanking the shoreline itself. Bran wiped his hands on a rag and stared at Mara like she might be carrying a miracle. "Do you have a caulking iron?" Mara's smile widened. "That is a romantic greeting." Bran did not blink. "Do you have one?" Mara set her pack down and sat on a rock like she owned it. "I might," she said. "I also might know where yours went." The air around them tightened, not with fear but with attention. Even Owen leaned forward, forgetting he was holding a scraper. Liv spoke calmly. "Tell her." Mara tilted her head. I heard a man on the coast road bragging about a trade. He said he got a fine caulking iron from a foolish household that did not watch its chest. He tried to sell it to me. Bran's face went stiff, and Mara shrugged. I told him no. I do not buy trouble that comes with fingerprints. Liv nodded once, approving. Eric asked, "Do you know where he is now?" Mara smiled like she was enjoying this. He said he was heading toward the next hamlet north to meet a cousin. He limps, he talks too much, he smells like sour ale. Father Alden appeared behind them, as if summoned by the word limps. He has always limped, Alden murmured, and he has always talked too much. Liv looked at Mara. Did he say his name? Mara nodded. He said his name was Rasks. Bran spat to the side. Not dramatic, just disgusted. Rask. That rat. Liv kept her voice steady. Can we find him? Mara lifted a hand, palm up. I can guide you to where I saw him last, if you pay me. Eric tried to negotiate immediately. We will pay you fairly. Mara looked at him. I am sure you will try. Liv said, We will pay. What do you want? Mara's expression softened, just a little. Wool. Good wool and dried fish. And something small that is not practical. A bead, perhaps. Something that reminds me I did not spend my spring chasing other people's mistakes for free. Hilda appeared beside Liv, eyes bright. I have beads, Hilda said. Many beads. Some of them even look respectable. Mara laughed softly. I like her. Hilda smiled. People often do. Plans formed quickly because spring did not allow long deloads. Liv decided Eric and Owen would go with Mara. Bran stayed because the ship could not wait and because Bran might unalive someone with his temper if he went. Sten stayed under Bran's eye, which was both punishment and protection. Owen felt a surge of excitement. A short journey. A chance to do something that might earn him more than a cold bench near the door. He tried not to look too eager. He failed. Liv noticed, anyway. She leaned close to Owen and spoke quietly. This is not adventure. This is recovery. Owen nodded. Yes, recovery. Liv's eyes held him. Bring it back. And bring back your sense too. Eric puffed a little with importance. We will. Father Alden watched them prepare and said softly to Owen, If you meet trouble, do not invite it for supper. Owen nodded, serious. Mara adjusted her pack straps. We leave at first light tomorrow, she said. The roads are mud, and the mud is impatient. That night in the Longhouse the mood was different. Not light, not fully. But spring had cracked the winter shell and hope leaked in. Sten sat near the door as usual, staring at the floor. Owen passed him and paused. If we get it back, Owen said quietly, it will help everyone. Sten swallowed. Yes. Owen hesitated, then added, You should want that too. Sten's voice was rough. I do. I have wanted it since I took it. I just did not know how to admit I was wrong until I was cold enough to listen. Owen nodded. That was as close to an apology as the Longhouse was likely to get. It was not perfect. It was real. Later, Father Alden told a short story because sleep came easier when the mind had something calm to hold. He spoke of a man who lost a tool and found it again, not because he was clever, but because his neighbours refused to let his mistake drown them all. The moral was simple. Noah survived alone, even if they loved pretending. As the fire dimmed, Liv lay back and stared at the rafters. Smoke curled above like a familiar thought. She felt the year shifting under her feet. Winter was releasing its grip. Spring was taking over, demanding work, demanding speed, demanding hope. Outside, the ground softened. The sea moved with a little more life. Somewhere up the coast road, a limping man carried an iron he did not earn. Inside, Ravenford made plans to take back what was theirs, not with glory, but with steady hands and a quiet refusal to be fooled twice. Chapter 5. Seedtime, Repairs, and Side-Eyes. They left at first light, because Mara said first light, and because nobody argued with a person who had already packed. The road north from Ravenford was less a road and more a suggestion pressed into mud. The snow had melted into a soft mess, and the soft mess clung to boots like it had abandonment issues. Eric walked with the careful pride of a man trying to look experienced while quietly negotiating with every slippery step. Owen moved faster. He felt spring in his chest like a drum. He also felt the chance to do something that mattered, something that might earn him more than a cold place near the door and a pile of mittens to stitch. Mara walked like the mud was her problem only if she decided it was. Her cloak stayed neat. Her breathing stayed calm. Her eyes stayed alert, scanning the path, the trees, and the small signs that told you who had passed recently and how willing they were to be polite. Eric tried conversation. "You travel often," he said. Mara nodded, often enough to stop believing most promises. Owen glanced at Eric, then at Mara. "Do you believe any promises?" Mara smiled. "I believe in payment." Eric cleared his throat. "We will pay you." Mara looked at him. "I believe you will try." They walked a while in steady silence after that. The woods were damp and quiet. Water dripped from branches and the air smelled like thawed earth and old leaves. Somewhere, a bird practiced a new song, slightly uncertain, like it was not sure spring had permission yet. By midday they reached the next hamlet, a cluster of small buildings and tan longhouse that looked tired. Smoke rose from a roof vent. People moved slowly, because mud and work made everyone careful. Mara did not ask around loudly. She did not like drawing attention before she had to. She watched who looked well-fed, who looked nervous, who looked like they knew a little too much. "There," she said, nodding toward a man near a shed. The man leaned on a stick, legs stiff. He talked with his hands, too wide, too eager. Even from a distance you could feel the shape of his confidence. It was the kind that came from never being held accountable long enough to learn better. "Rask," Mara said. Same limp, same mouth. Eric straightened. "We will speak to him." Mara caught his sleeve. "Calmly," she said. "He will try to make you loud so you look foolish." Eric nodded as if that had been his plan. "Yes." "Calm." Owen felt his jaw tighten. The missing caulking iron was not a distant idea anymore. It was here, near this man, near this mouth that had bragged about another household being foolish. They approached. Rask noticed them and smiled like a man who enjoyed trouble as a hobby. "Well, well," he said. "Visitors. What brings you to my muddy little corner of the world?" Eric spoke first, because Eric believed leadership meant being the first voice. "We are from Ravenford. We are looking for a tool." Rask raised an eyebrow. "A tool? That could be anything. Some people are tools." Mara stepped forward, her voice smooth. "You have a caulking iron that does not belong to you." Rask laughed a little too loud. "Belong? You mean the one I traded for? A fair trade, you know how it is. A man offers, a man accepts." Owen could not stop himself. "He stole it from us." Rask looked at Owen with mild amusement. "He traded it from you. If your house lets men walk away with tools, that is a lesson you needed." Eric took a slow breath, trying to remember calm. "We want it back. We will trade for it." Rask tilted his head. "And what will you trade?" Mara answered before Eric could offer something stupid. "Wool. Good wool. And dried fish. And a small silver ring." Eric blinked. A silver ring. Mara did not look at him. "You want the tool, you pay for the tool, and you pay for the lesson." Rask's eyes narrowed. "A ring too." Owen watched his face carefully. He saw the hunger there not for food but for advantage. Rask loved advantage the way some people loved songs. Eric said, "We do not carry a ring." Mara said, "I do." Eric turned, surprised. "You do." Mara smiled, faint and sharp. "I carry many things. Try to keep up." Rask leaned forward slightly. "Let me see it." Mara pulled a small ring from a pouch, plain but bright. She held it up but enough for him to see, not enough for him to grab. Rask licked his lips, the way a man did when he thought he was winning. "Fine," he said. "Wool, fish, ring. Then the iron is yours." Mara nodded. "Bring it." Rask gestured to a boy nearby, who ran into the shed and returned with a wrapped bundle. Rask unwrapped it slowly, enjoying the moment, and there it was. A caulking iron, dark and heavy, familiar in shape. Owen felt relief hit him like warmth. He also felt anger, because it should never have been here in the first place. Mara handed over the wool and fish with practiced efficiency. Then she held out the ring. Rask reached for it. Mara pulled back slightly. "First," she said, "you say where you got it." Rask frowned. "I traded for it." Mara kept her gaze steady. "From whom?" Rask hesitated. Then he smiled again, smaller. "From a man named Sten. From your house." Owen glanced at Eric. Eric's face tightened. Mara handed over the ring anyway. "Thank you," she said. "And now we know." Rask pocketed it fast. "Pleasure doing business," he said. Mara turned away without another word. Owen picked up the caulking iron and felt its weight like a promise made solid. Eric followed, jaw clenched, trying to hold calm and failing quietly. As they walked out of the hamlet, Owen said, "We should tell everyone Rask is a rat." Mara looked at him. "Everyone already knows. That is why he travels." Eric muttered, "We paid too much." Mara shrugged. "You paid for speed. You paid for certainty. If you wanted cheap, you would have waited, and your ship would have leaked while you waited." Eric did not like that, but he could not argue. They headed back with the tool wrapped safely in cloth. The mud was still there. The woods were still damp. But the weight in Owen's hands made every step feel useful. Near sunset, they reached Ravenford. Smoke rose from the Longhouse roof. The familiar shape of it made Owen feel a surprising surge of affection, even for the door draft. This was his place, even when it was annoying. Bran met them at the shore, eyes sharp. "You have it." Owen held it up. "We have it." Bran exhaled hard, like he had been holding his breath since winter. "Good, because I was about to start talking to Iron like it owed me a favoured." Liv approached next, calm as ever. She took in their faces, then the wrapped tool. "Good," she said. "You brought it back." Eric spoke quickly. "We traded for it. Mara arranged it." Mara nodded once, as promised. Liv looked at Mara. "Payment will be given." Hilda appeared at Liv's shoulder, eyes bright. "I have a bead ready." Mara smiled. "I knew you would." Then Liv looked at Owen. "And you," she said, "did you keep your sense?" Owen nodded. "Mostly." Liv accepted that. Mostly is good. They returned the caulking iron to the tool chest that evening. Liv made a point of latching it and then standing for a moment with her hand on the lid, as if the chest needed reassurance. Sten stood near the door, watching. His face was tight with shame and hope. Liv spoke to him quietly, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. "We got it back." Sten swallowed. "Thank you." Bran snorted. "Do not thank us. Thank your cold seat by the door. It taught you something." Sten nodded, because he could not argue. Spring work did not slow down for emotional moments. The next morning Bran had the iron in his hand and the ship's seams under his eye. He worked with a focus that looked almost like peace. Owen and Sten carried tar, heated it carefully, and listened to Bran's instructions. Bran explained how to press the caulking material into seams, how to seal it without wasting it, how to judge the wood. He did not compliment anyone. Compliments were not a shipwright habit, but he did not shout as much either, and that was its own kind of mercy. In the fields, Liv and Eric worked the thawed ground. They cleared stones, checked fence posts, and argued about where to plant barley and where to plant oats. The arguments were soft, because both of them knew the ground would have the final opinion anyway. Hilda moved between field and longhouse, carrying seeds in a pouch and advice in her mouth. She told Liv which families had enough seed and which ones were worried. She told Eric which fences had weak spots. She told everyone that the mud was winning and would continue to win until summer. Mara stayed a few days, trading goods and gossip. She laid out cloth, salt, small metal fittings, and fine needles that made Hilda sigh with joy. She also brought news, because news travelled with traders the way smoke travelled with fire. "Jorvik is busy," Mara said one evening, sitting near the fire with a bowl of stew. "More stalls, more voices, more men pretending they know what a fair price is." Eric leaned forward. "Jorvik has good trade." Mara nodded. "Wool, amber, iron. And talk. Always talk. Father Alden asked, any word from Dublin? Mara's eyes flicked to him. Word is always arriving from Dublin. Some of it is true, some of it is just a story wearing boots. Hilda said, stories wearing boots are my favourite kind. As the days warmed, planting began. Seedtime was not romantic. It was bending, digging, dropping seed, covering it, and hoping you had not angered the gods of weather and worms. People moved in lines across the field like slow, careful birds. Owen helped when he could, but Bran demanded his hands for ship work. Owen felt torn. The fields felt like duty. The ship felt like possibility. Liv noticed his restlessness. You want to be on the water, she said one afternoon as they walked the field edge. Owen hesitated, then nodded. I do. Liv did not scold him. She simply said, then learn how the land feeds the water. A ship is useless if the stores are empty. Owen looked down at the ground. Yes, Liv added. Also, the ship is not yours. It belongs to the house, remember that. Owen nodded again, quieter. Yes. That evening after work, the bench problem returned like a familiar itch. Owen had been busy enough to forget it for a few days. Busy helped. But then he saw Eric sitting near the fire, warm and comfortable, and he remembered the promise like a stone in his pocket. Owen approached Eric as the Longhouse settled. Eric, he said. Eric looked up. Yes. About the bench. Eric's face tightened in slow dread. The bench. Hilda looked over from her wool, eyes amused. Here we go, Bran muttered. I would rather rat-a-tar the whole ship alone. Liv glanced at Owen. Say it. Owen took a breath. You promised me a better place. I have worked. I went with Mara and brought back the iron. I have done what you asked. Eric opened his mouth, then closed it, because he was realizing he had fewer exits than he wanted. Liv spoke calmly. Owen, you have done well. Owen's chest warmed at that. Liv continued, but a bench is not a reward you hand out like bread. It is a shared space. We decide as a house. Owen's hope dipped. Then how? Liv looked around. We will do a usefulness trial, she said, a simple one, for a short time. Whoever takes the hardest early chores without complaining gets the warmer bench spot. Hilda smiled. That is cruel. I like it, Bran said. Complaining is the only thing that keeps me alive. Liv looked at Bran. You may complain, but you may not quit. Eric nodded, relieved to have a plan that was not his. Fine. A trial. Owen felt excitement and fear. He could do hard chores. He did not mind hard chores. He minded being ignored. A trial meant he could show what he was worth. Sten, from near the door, lifted his head. Does this include me? Liv looked at him. It includes you too. Sten's face tightened. He nodded once. Yes. The next morning the trial began. Owen woke early, pulled on his cloak and headed out into the cold, damp dawn. He hauled water, fed animals and cleaned out the byre area. He did it fast. He did it quietly. He did it with the fierce focus of a man chasing warmth. Sten was there too, working hard, jaw set. He did not speak much. He did not smile. He carried water and wood and waste with the determination of a man trying to drag himself back into the house's good opinion. Hilda watched them with a kind expression that was still slightly amused. Look at them, she whispered to Father Alden. Two young men racing for a bench like it is a throne. Father Alden murmured, A bench is a throne when your feet are cold. The trial lasted days. Owen worked until his shoulders ached. Sten worked until his hands bled a little, then wrapped them and kept going. Neither man wanted to lose. Neither man wanted to be the one who complained first. Liv watched without intervening, only stepping in when safety required it. She was not trying to break them. She was trying to see who could carry work without making it everyone else's problem. On the fourth day, Owen slipped in the mud while carrying a bucket and landed hard. He sat there for a moment, not hurt badly, just stunned and angry at the ground. Sten stepped toward him. You all right? Owen glared. I hate mud. Sten nodded. Mud hates everyone. Sten held out a hand. Owen hesitated, then took it. Sten pulled him up. It was a small moment. It was also a bigger moment, because late winter had almost broken them, and spring was teaching them how to be in the same house without turning into enemies. That night, Liv made a decision. "The trial is done," she said. Owen's stomach tightened. Liv looked at Owen. "You have earned a better place." Owen's heart lifted. Liv looked at Sten. "You have also earned a better place than the door, but not the one you think you deserve." Sten swallowed. "Yes." Liv continued, "Owen will move one bench space closer to the fire. Sten will move one bench space closer too. Not because he won, because he is trying, and because the house needs him working, not freezing." Eric nodded quickly. "That is fair." Bran muttered, "It is practical." Hilda smiled softly. "It is merciful, which is rare." Owen moved that night. It was only wad bench space. The fire was still not close enough to make him sweat, but the difference in draft was real, and the difference in respect felt even warmer. He lay down and listened to the longhouse settle. Smoke curled above, spring dampness mixed with fire smell. The house breathed. Owen thought about the corking iron returned to its chest, about the seeds in the ground, about Sten pulling him out of the mud. A year was not built from big moments. It was built from small ones that added up, whether you liked it or not. Chapter 6. Summer Fishing Runs and Short Nights. Summer arrived in Ravenford like a bright, relentless cousin who refused to understand the concept of bedtime. The days stretched long and the nights became thin and polite. The sun lingered near the horizon like it had forgotten something important and could not leave until it remembered. The longhouse felt lighter, even with smoke still curling in the rafters, because people could open the door without inviting death by cold air. The fields turned green, and that green made everyone act as if life had always been easy. It had not. It would not be. But summer had a way of making you believe. With warmth came fishing runs. The sea gave and the sea demanded, but in summer it was at least willing to negotiate. Bran declared the ship ready after the repairs. He ran his hands along the seams and nodded in satisfaction, which for him was a celebration. If you listened closely, you could almost hear him forgiving the world for winter. Owen stood near the shore, watching the longship rock gently in shallow water. He had a better bench now. He had calluses in new places. He also had a hunger for the water that did not go away. Liv approached, carrying a coil of rope. "Today you work," she said. Owen tried to hide his grin. "I am always working." Liv looked at him. "Yes. Now you work where you want to work. Do not get foolish about it." Owen nodded, serious. Sten came down to the shore too, still quieter than before, but less haunted by the door draft. He carried supplies without being asked. He did not try to lead. He did not try to impress. He simply showed up. Eric arrived with the confidence of a man stepping onto a ship that other people had made seaworthy. Summer air looked good on him. It made his leadership feel more believable. Mara had left weeks earlier with her payment and her bead, but her words remained. Jorvik is busy, trade is good, the world is moving. Fishing runs did not require grand speeches. They required nets, lines, and the patience to do the same motions until your arms felt like they belonged to someone else. They pushed off in the early morning. The sea was calm, a wide dark surface reflecting pale light. The oars dipped and lifted, dip and lift, and the longship moved like a quiet thought sliding across water. Owen sat at an oar, feeling the rhythm enter his body. This was different than hauling water or sewing mittens. This felt like purpose. The work was hard, but the horizon made it feel meaningful. Bran stood near the stern, watching everything. He watched the seams. He watched the sail. He watched people. His eyes were everywhere. He trusted the ship, but he did not trust the sea. Father Alden was not on the first run. His bones preferred land. He stayed behind, telling stories to children, and making sure the longhouse did not burn down out of boredom. Liv stayed too, because the household still needed a brain while the ship had its adventure. She kept the fields organized, the stores measured, and the people reminded that summer was not a holiday. It was a different kind of race. Out on the water they dropped nets in a favoured spot near a rocky outcrop. The nets sank, and time stretched. Fishing was the art of waiting without losing your mind. Some people managed it, some people filled the time with talk. Eric tried to sound wise. The sea rewards those who respect it. Bran said, the sea rewards those who do not make mistakes. Owen said, the sea rewards the fish, mostly. Bran looked at him. The fish do not always feel rewarded. They waited. The sun climbed, the water shimmered. When they hauled the nets, there was weight. There were fish, silver bodies twisting, the smell sharp and alive. Owen's hands moved quickly, pulling, sorting, keeping the catch from escaping back to its smug, watery home. Eric laughed once, genuine, good. This will fill our stores, Bran nodded. This will keep us alive. The second run a few days later was harder. The sea changed its mind, as it liked to do. A wind rose, not fierce but insistent. The water grew choppier. The horizon looked less friendly. Owen felt a tightness in his chest. Not fear exactly, respect maybe, or the awareness that water did not care if you had a better bench now. Bran watched the sky. We go closer in, he said. We do not chase fish into bad water. Eric looked like he wanted to argue, then chose not to. He had learned, slowly, that Bran's judgment on the sea was worth more than pride. They turned slightly, keeping land within easier reach. The wind pushed against the sail with a stubborn hand. The ship rose and fell, and the rhythm that had felt soothing now felt like a test. Owen's knuckles whitened on the oar. He kept moving because stopping was worse. Sten sat across from him, face calm. He met Owen's eyes briefly. Keep breathing, his look seemed to say. Do not embarrass yourself. Owen hated that it helped. They reached calmer water again, and the tightness eased. No disaster happened, no dramatic rescue. Just a reminder that the sea held power and did not need to show off. When they returned, the Longhouse greeted them with warmth and noise. Children wanted to see fish. Dogs wanted scraps. Hilda wanted to know who had been scared first. Liv wanted to know the catch count and the condition of the ship. Bran reported in practical terms. Good catch, ship holds, weather changed. We stayed smart. Liv nodded. Good. Owen felt proud. Not loud pride, quiet pride, the kind that helps you sleep. As summer progressed, fishing became routine. Routine was comforting, but it also revealed tensions that had been hidden by winter survival. Eric wanted bigger runs, farther out, more fish, more proof that he led a strong household. Bran wanted steady runs, safe runs, runs that did not risk the ship. Owen wanted to be on every run, because the water pulled at him like a song. Sten wanted to be useful without being noticed, which was a strange desire but understandable after what he had done. One evening, after a good haul, Eric spoke near the fire. We should do more than fish, he said. Summer is the season to trade. Liv glanced at him. Trade costs time. Eric nodded. Trade also brings iron, salt, cloth, things we need. Hilda said, trade also brings gossip, things I need. Bran looked annoyed. Trade also brings men who think they can talk you out of your best wool. Eric spread his hands. We will talk them back. Father Alden, who had been listening, said softly, trade is not a fight. It is two people trying to make each other feel slightly less clever than they think they are. Mara's earlier words returned to the room even though she was not there. Jorvik is busy. The world is moving. Owen leaned forward, unable to stop himself. Jorvik, he said, we could go. Liv studied him. You want to go? Owen nodded. Yes. Liv looked at Eric. You want to go too? Eric tried to look calm. It would be good. We could trade fish, wool, maybe some carved wood. Bran muttered, and bring back tools that will be stolen again. Sten's face tightened at that, but he did not speak. Liv took a slow breath. She was not against trade, she was against foolish timing. The harvest was still ahead, the fields needed watching, the fishing runs needed continuing. Summer gave you time, but it also demanded you spend it wisely. We will decide after the next fishing run, Liv said. If the stores are good and the fields look strong, we can spare a ship for a trip. Eric nodded, Satisfied to have a path forward, Owen felt a surge of hope. Europe was not just a place. It was a symbol of something bigger than Ravenford smoke and benches. The next run came with clear skies and gentle water, as if the sea wanted to apologize for its earlier mood. The nets came up heavy. The boat returned with fish enough to make everyone in the Longhouse smile in that tired summer way. That night, Liv did her counts. Fish stores, grain growth, wool bundles, work capacity. She did not do it in secret. She did it near the fire, because everyone needed to see that decisions were made from reality, not from Eric's wishful thinking. After a while, she nodded. "We can go," she said. Owen felt his chest lift. Liv held up a hand. "Not everyone. Not for long. A small crew, a short trip." Eric said, "I will go." Bran said, "Of course you will." Liv looked at Bran. "You will go too." Bran blinked. "Me." Liv nodded. "You know the ship. You know what we can risk. Also, you need to see the world so you stop believing Ravenford is the only place where people are foolish." Hilda smiled. "Good luck, world." Liv turned to Owen. "You will go." Owen could not hide his grin. "Yes." Liv added, "You will listen more than you speak." Owen's grin softened. "Yes." Liv looked at Sten. "You will not go." Sten's shoulders sagged. "Yes." Liv continued, "You will stay and work the fields and the stores. You will protect the house while others travel. That is how you repay." Sten nodded again. He looked disappointed, but he also looked relieved. The sea still held too much memory for him, perhaps, and land work was steadier. Father Alden spoke gently. "Sten, you do not pay back trust by chasing excitement. You pay back trust by being dependable when no one is watching." Sten swallowed. Yes. Plans formed in calm tones. They would leave soon while the summer still held, while the seas were kind, while the days were long enough to travel without fighting darkness. Owen lay down later on his slightly better bench and stared at the rafters. Smoke curled above, but in summer it felt lighter, less like a weight and more like a familiar habit. He thought about Jorvik. He thought about markets and voices and the river and the ships. He thought about returning with goods that mattered, and stories that Father Alden would pretend not to envy. He also thought about the Longhouse itself, about Liv's calm rule, about Bran's stubborn skill, about Eric's loud confidence, about Sten's quiet work and complicated shame, about Hilda's sharp humour, about the way a household was a ship of its own, held together by constant repair. Outside, the night was short. The sun dipped, then rose again, as if it could not bear to leave them alone with their thoughts for too long. Summer moved on, bright and demanding. The sea waited. The road to trade waited. Ravenford gathered itself not for glory, but for the next practical step. Chapter 7. Trading Winds to Jorvik. Liv treated Departure Day like a festival, where the prize was not dying of poor planning. She did not sing, she did not dance. She wrote lists in her head, and stared at anyone who tried to add a surprise. Eric stood near the doorway with the confidence of a man about to travel, which is a special kind of confidence because it is borrowed from the idea of travel, not from the reality of it. Bran checked the ship again. Then he checked it again, as if the planks might change their mind while he blinked. Owen moved back and forth like a dog that had been told it was finally going outside. He carried bundles, tightened rope, and tried not to grin too hard, because too much joy looked careless, and Liv noticed carelessness the way Smoke noticed hair. Sten stayed in the Longhouse assigned to fields and stores, watching preparations with a face that tried to be calm and failed quietly. He did not ask to go. He did not complain. That was progress. Hilda leaned against a post with her woolwork, eyes bright with interest. She looked like she might travel by simply listening hard enough. Father Alden sat near the fire, watching the buses with steady amusement. Liv held up a small bundle. "Dried fish," she said. 2 days' worth. Eric nodded. "Yes." Liv held up another. "Bread, hard enough to defend yourself with." Eric nodded again. Liv held up a third. "Fresh water." Do not drink it all on the first day because you feel optimistic. Bran muttered, optimism is thirst with a good story. Liv ignored that and continued, spare rope, tar in a sealed pot, 2 needles, a patch cloth, a small bag of salt, a small bag of barley. Owen blinked. Barley. Liv looked at him. If you think a long trip can be done on confidence alone, you can stay home and stitch more mittens. Owen straightened. Barley is good. Barley is wise. Hilda smiled. Look at him, learning. Eric tried to take control of the moment. We will be fine, he said. We have sailed before. Liv looked at him. You have sailed before. That is not the same as being prepared now. Eric opened his mouth, then closed it. He chose to be quiet. That was his best contribution so far. Just as they finished packing, Mara arrived like a familiar inconvenience. She walked in with a small pack on her back and an expression that suggested she had known this would happen all along. You are leaving without me, she said. Eric blinked. We did not ask you. Mara nodded. Yes, I noticed. Bran sighed. What do you want? Mara smiled. I want to travel to Jorvik. I want to sell some goods. I want to avoid walking the coast road alone. And I want you to pretend you are not relieved. Owen looked at Liv, unsure if this was allowed. Liv studied Mara for a long moment, then said, If you join, you bring your own food. Mara nodded. Of course. Liv added, And you bring your own trouble. Mara smiled wider. I always do. Eric tried to look welcoming again. Fine, you can come. Mara glanced at him. Thank you for allowing me to do what I was already doing. Father Alden murmured. That is how most decisions happen. Hilda gave Mara a bead without being asked, a small carved thing that caught the light. Mara accepted it. That is charming, she said. I will pretend it is a payment and not a warning, Hilda replied. It can be both. Liv spoke once more to the crew, voice calm and firm. You leave now, you return before harvest pulls us apart. You come back with useful things, not at stories. Eric nodded, yes. Bran nodded, yes. Owen nodded hardest, yes. Mara nodded once, like a contract signed without ink, yes. They walked down to the shore where the longship waited, nose pointed toward the wider world. The sea was calm and the sky was bright as if summer wanted to show off. They pushed off and the ship slid into water with a soft, eager sound. Oars dipped. The shoreline pulled away. Ravenford became smaller behind them. Owen felt a tightness in his chest, not fear, not exactly, a kind of awe. The Longhouse had felt like the whole world in winter. Now it was a dot on the coast, smoke rising like a thin thread. Bran watched the wake and nodded once. She rides well, he said. Eric said, Of course she does. It is my ship. Bran looked at him. It is the house ship. Eric frowned. It is my house. Mara leaned back, comfortable already. It is the sea ship, she said. The sea will decide whose it is. Owen hid a smile. The sea always sounded like it had better arguments. They sailed along the coast for part of the day, keeping land within sight. The water shimmered. The air smelled clean. The wind was gentle, like it was helping only because it was in a good mood. By afternoon they raised sail. The cloth caught the wind and the ship leaned slightly, eager. The oars rested. Owen watched the sail fill and felt like he was watching a living thing breathe. Bran adjusted lines with practiced hands. Mara sat near the middle and checked her goods, because trust in the sea was nice, but trust in knots was better. Eric tried to look like a captain. He stood with his feet wide and his chin up, staring at the horizon as if he could see the future, and it pleased him. Mara looked at Owen and spoke softly. He does this often. Owen whispered back, He thinks it helps. Mara nodded. It helps him. The first night on the water was calm. They pulled the ship into a sheltered inlet and made a small camp on shore. A fire crackled. The sky darkened slowly, but not fully because summer nights were too proud to be complete. They ate dried fish and bread that did not care about teeth. Eric talked about trade plans. We will sell fish, he said, and wool, and perhaps some carved work. Bran stared into the fire. We will buy iron nails, and a new whetstone, and maybe a new caulking iron in case winter returns with its jokes. Owen said, We should buy a better lock for the tool chest. Mara laughed quietly. A better lock does not fix a household. It only makes theft more interesting. Father Alden was not there, but his lessons travelled anyway. Owen remembered the line about small things becoming tests. Eric glanced at Owen. You worry too much. Owen looked at him. You worry too little, Bran snorted. That is the most honest thing said all day. The next days were a rhythm of sailing, resting, and watching the sky. The sea stayed mostly kind. The wind shifted. A fog rolled in once, soft and thick, making the world smaller. Owen felt his stomach tighten as the horizon vanished. Bran spoke calmly. Stay steady. Keep the sail trimmed. Listen. Listen to what? Owen asked. Bran replied, Everything. The water, the rope, the ship. If something changes, it will tell you before it becomes a problem. Mara added, And listen to Eric too. He will tell you when he is about to make the problem worse. Eric heard that and frowned. I heard that. Mara smiled. Good. They passed other boats, small and large, moving like dark shapes on the water. Some waved, some did not. Trade and travel were common enough, but trust was always measured in careful glances. On the fourth day, the river approach to Jorvik appeared, busy and loud in a way that felt almost shocking after the quiet coast. Ships lined the banks. Smoke rose from many hearths. Voices carried across water. The air smelled of wood smoke, wet rope, cooked meat, and too many people trying to sell something. Owen stood and stared. It was like a longhouse that never ended. Mara watched his face. Do not look like that, she said. Like what? Like a boy in a sweet shop, Mara replied. It invites expensive mistakes. Eric smiled wide. This is good, he said. Look at it. Wealth. Bran muttered, Look at it. Noise. They guided the ship to a place along the bank where they could tie up. Men shouted directions. A boy offered to help for a fee. Another boy offered to help for the same fee but faster. Owen watched and realized the boys were also trading, just with confidence instead of fish. They secured the ship and stepped onto the busy banks. Owen's feet felt strange on ground that did not sway. His ears filled with voices. Stalls lined the paths. Goods were everywhere. Cloth, pots, tools, leather, beads, salt, dried herbs, smoked fish from other coasts, wooden bowls carved smooth, amber that caught the light like trapped sun. Owen's eyes darted. He wanted to touch everything. He wanted to smell everything. He wanted to understand everything. Bran grabbed his sleeve. Do not wander, he said. Markets swallow fools, Mara added, and they chew slowly. Eric strode forward like he owned the place, which was a common Viking travel habit and not always a wise one. He headed toward a cluster of traders with cloth and metal goods. Mara paused to look around, gaze sharp. Jorvik is busy this season, she said. More boats than last year, more southern goods too. Bran asked, Southern goods like what? Mara replied, Like salt that does not taste like the sea itself, like coins, like fancy knives that make men believe they are important. Bran grunted. Knives do not make men important. Work does. Mara smiled. True, but knives are quicker. They began trading. Eric offered dried fish. The trader lifted a fish, sniffed it, and made a face like he had just been insulted. The fish was perfectly fine. The face was part of the dance. Eric offered a better fish. The trader looked disappointed, as if he had hoped for worse. Mara watched, amused. You are doing well, she said to Eric. Eric brightened. Thank you, Mara added. For a man from a small place with big confidence, Eric's smile tightened. Bran bargained for nails and tar. He spoke to a metal worker whose hands were stained dark and whose eyes were sharp. The metal worker named a price that made Bran's eyebrows rise. Bran said, That is robbery. The metal worker replied, It is commerce. Bran said, It is robbery. Mara leaned close to Owen. Watch this, she whispered. This is his sport. Bran and the metalworker argued with calm voices and sharp words. They insulted each other's judgment. They praised each other's quality. They circled a price like two dogs circling a bone. Eventually they settled on a number that made neither of them happy, which meant it was correct. Owen carried bundles back toward the ship, arms full, mind full, heart buzzing. In the afternoon, Mara led them to a stall with whetstones. She picked one up, tested it with a practiced thumb, and nodded. "This is good," she said. Bran asked, "How do you know?" Mara replied, "It feels like it will not betray you, like most things should." Bran looked like he wanted to argue, then accepted it. He paid with wool and a small piece of amber, because everyone in Jorvik wanted amber, even if they pretended they did not. Eric found cloth for Liv, simple and strong. He chose a colour that looked calm. He tried to claim it was a thoughtful choice. Mara raised an eyebrow and said, "Will you just pick the one that did not make you look foolish?" Eric did not respond. That was also progress. As the day wore on, Owen noticed something else. Not every face was new. Some men watched them with a familiarity that felt uncomfortable, like a hand on your shoulder you did not expect. Near a stall of carved combs, Owen saw a man with a stiff gait, not as obvious as Rask, but enough to catch the eye. The man glanced at their goods, then looked away quickly. Owen nudged Mara. "That man." Mara followed his gaze, then nodded once. "He has the look of someone who sells other people's things." Bran stepped closer. "Owen, do not start trouble." Owen said quietly, "I am not starting trouble. I am noticing it." Mara smiled. "Good. Notice more." They returned to the ship near evening, loaded with purchases. They had nails, tar, a whetstone, a small bag of salt, cloth, a few small metal fittings, nothing flashy, all useful. That was Liv's standard. Eric sat on the bank and watched the river flow past. He looked satisfied. "We did well," he said. Bran said, "We did not do badly." Mara said, "You did not embarrass yourselves. That is the true success." Owen looked out at the crowded river. He thought about Ravenford. He thought about the Longhouse benches. He thought about how small their dramas looked from here, and how those dramas still mattered, because they were the threads holding people together. That night, they slept near the ship with the sounds of Jorvik around them, distant laughter, footsteps, dogs, and the constant low hum of trade. Owen drifted off with his mind full of markets and faces and the strange feeling that the world was larger than smoke and winter, but still made of the same human choices. Chapter 8. Summer's End, Return with Rumours. Leaving Europe was easier than arriving, mostly because the river did not care about your emotions. They packed at dawn, because that was what you did when you did not want to waste time with goodbyes to people you might never see again. Mara checked her goods, tied her knots, and nodded in satisfaction. "I sold well," she said. Eric asked, "Did you sell your attitude too?" Mara smiled. "No, that is not for sale." Bran checked the ship seams again, because Europe water was still water and water loved to find weaknesses. He pressed his hand along the repaired planks and gave a small grunt of approval. Owen carried bundles and tried to remember every smell of the market, because he suspected it would feel like a dream once he was back in Ravenford with goat breath and smoke. They pushed off into the river, rowing carefully through the traffic. Other ships moved around them like drifting thoughts. A man shouted a warning. Another shouted an insult. A third shouted something that might have been a song, but it could also have been a threat. In a crowded place, the difference was often volume. Once they reached open water again, the air felt cleaner, the sky felt larger. The sea greeted them with small waves and a steady wind that seemed pleased to see them leave the noise behind. Eric sat near the middle and began planning how he would describe this trip later. Owen could see it in his eyes. The heroic version was already forming. Bran caught Owen watching and muttered, "He will tell it like he negotiated with the sea." Mara said, "He will tell it like the sea apologized." Eric heard that and looked annoyed. "I can hear you." Mara replied, Good. Then you can improve. They sailed south along the coast at first, following the safer line of travel. Summer was still holding, but it was softer now, less relentless. The light was still long, but the evenings carried a faint, cool edge, like a reminder of what waited later in the year. On the second day out, they sheltered in an inlet near a small cluster of huts. They did not stay long. They traded a little fish for fresh water and asked after weather. A local man told them storms were forming farther out. Not fierce yet, but moody. The sea is starting to remember winter, the man said. Bran nodded. I know the feeling. That night, as they ate near the fire, Mara spoke of other routes. Hedeby is busy too, she said, if you go south. More traders, more southern coins, more men pretending they invented bargaining. Eric asked, Have you been? Mara nodded. Yes. It is useful if you like crowds and clever lies. Owen asked, What about Birka? Mara smiled. Birka is quieter, but sharp. The Baltic has its own mood. People there trade like they are counting every breath. Bran said, I prefer wood and water. People are too complicated. Mara replied, Wood and water are complicated too. They just do not argue back in words. Eric asked, What about Dublin? You mentioned it earlier. Mara leaned back, voice calm. Dublin has good trade. It also has its own tensions. You can get what you need, but you might pay in more than wool. That is all I will say to keep you sleeping. Owen nodded. Understand. Mara did not like making travel sound too easy. It invited foolishness. The next days passed in a steady rhythm of sail and oar, of watching sky and water, of small jokes and quiet focus. The sea stayed mostly kind, but the wind shifted more often now. A cloud line gathered once and made the water darken. They adjusted sail and stayed alert until it passed. No disasters happened. They did not need one. The tension came from the quiet knowledge that the year was turning, and timing mattered. They needed to get home before summer slipped into harvest demand. On the 5th day of travel back, they saw another ship on the horizon. Smaller than theirs, sailing along the same line. It kept distance at first, then drifted closer. Bran watched it carefully. They are curious, he said. Eric stood with his captain's stance again. Let them be curious. Mara narrowed her eyes. Curiosity sometimes carries knives. Eric frowned. We are not in a story, Mara said. Everything is a story. Some of them just end badly. The ship did not approach fully. It angled away after a time, as if deciding there was nothing worth stealing, or deciding the risk was not worth it. Bran kept watching until it was gone. Owen asked quietly, should we worry? Bran replied, we watch. Watching is how you stay alive. Also, if you worry all the time, you waste energy you need for rowing. Mara added, but a little worry keeps you polite. On the final day, Ravenford's coastline appeared, familiar and plain in the best way. Owen felt his shoulders drop. It was the relief of returning to problems you understood. Smoke rose from the Longhouse. The shore looked muddy from recent rain. The world smelled like wet earth and home. As they pulled the ship in, people came down to greet them. Liv was first, because Liv was always first when something mattered. She walked with steady steps and watched their faces before she looked at their bundles. You returned, she said. That is a good start. Eric smiled. We returned with goods. Liv nodded. That is the next good start. Bran lifted a bundle. Nails, he said. Tar. A whetstone. Liv's eyes flicked to it. Good. Owen lifted the cloth bundle. Cloth for you. Liv's expression softened slightly. Good. Mara stepped onto the shore and stretched like a cat. And I returned with my own goods and my own survival. Also good. Hilda arrived next, eyes bright. Tell me everything, she said. Mara smiled. Later. Hilda looked offended. Now. Liv said. Later. Hilda sighed dramatically. Fine, later, but not too later. They carried the goods up to the Longhouse. The familiar interior smell hit Owen like a wave. Smoke, wood, wool. A faint animal note. It was not glamorous. It was real. Sten was there, standing near the middle now, no longer at the door. He looked tired, sun-browned, hands rough. He had been working, that showed. He nodded at Owen, then at Bran, then at Eric. He did not ask question. He simply helped carry bundles, which was his quiet way of saying he was still part of the house. Liv began inventory immediately, because Liv did not believe in resting until the work was counted. As she checked items, she asked short question. How was the sea? Any trouble? Any news? Eric began speaking, starting with the heroic version. The sea was calm. The market was loud. We traded well, Bran corrected calmly. The sea was calm mostly. The market was loud always. We traded fairly. Mara added, and you did not get tricked too badly. That is a miracle. Owen listened and waited, because he had learned to let the elders talk first, and because Liv was watching, and because Liv did not tolerate eager interruptions unless they carried useful facts. Later, when the goods were stored and a meal had been eaten, the Longhouse settled into a listening mood. That is what happened when travellers returned. The household wanted proof that the world still existed beyond their walls. Father Alden sat near the fire, eyes bright. He had missed story material. He pretended he had not. Hilda sat close, ready to collect details. Liv sat with a bowl of stew and a face that said she was listening for practical information, not romance. Eric began again. Jorvik is busy, he said. More stalls than you can count. Ships everywhere. Goods from places we have not seen. Hilda asked, any interesting people? Eric hesitated. Many. Mara answered, too many. Bran added, and all of them wanted to sell us something we did not need. Owen spoke then, because this mattered. There were men watching, he said, in the market. Men who look like they sell other people's things. Liv's eyes sharpened, like Rask. Owen nodded. Not Rask, but his kind. Mara said, I noticed too. A small network, not formal. Just men who move goods that are not theirs and pretend the world owes them profit. Father Alden murmured, thieves always form a brotherhood. It makes them feel less lonely. Eric frowned. We did not lose anything. Mara looked at him. This time. Liv asked, did you hear any names? Mara nodded slowly. I heard talk. Men on the coast road. Tools. Small iron. Things that vanish from one house and appear in another. Not a single group, but a habit. People trading behind their own households. The Longhouse grew quieter because that was not just distant news, that was a mirror. Sten's face tightened. He stared into his bowl. Liv looked at him, not cruel, just steady. This is why we keep our tools locked. This is why we do not trade in secret. One foolish act becomes a path, and then everyone walks it. Sten swallowed. Yes. Hilda asked, who is doing it? Mara shrugged. Many. Some out of hunger, some out of pride. Some because they like the thrill of think they are clever. Bran muttered, clever is overrated. Father Alden said, clever without honour is just noise. Liv nodded. Then we will be quiet and careful. We will not let Ravenford become part of that habit. Eric tried to sound confident. We will tighten our rules. Hilda smirked. You will tighten your words. Liv will tighten the rules. Eric sighed. That is probably true. The days after their return slid quickly into end-of-summer work. The fields needed attention. Fishing runs continued, shorter now. The air cooled slightly. The light began to fade earlier, just enough to make people look up and realize time had been moving while they were busy. Owen helped unload and store, then returned to ship work, cleaning and preparing it for the next season. Bran wanted the ship maintained even when it was not moving. A ship left alone became a problem, and Bran did not like problems that waited quietly. Mara stayed only briefly. She traded a few remaining goods, collected her payment, and prepared to leave again, because traders did not belong anywhere for long. Before she left, she spoke to Owen near the doorway. You did well on the trip, she said. Owen blinked. Thank you. Mara added, do not let it make you arrogant. Owen nodded. I will try. Mara smiled. Good. Trying is the only honest plan. She left with the morning, walking down the shore path like she had always been part of the coastline. As summer ended, the Longhouse mood shifted. The rumour about tool trading did not disappear. It sat in the corner of everyone's mind, a quiet reminder. People checked the tool chest more often. They watched each other's hands, not with hatred, but with caution. Liv called it healthy, Bran called it necessary, Eric called it unfortunate, Hilda called it interesting, Father Alden called it human. Owen lay on his bench one evening, listening to the Longhouse settle. He was closer to the fire than before, but close enough to be spoiled, but close enough to feel included. He thought about Jorvik, about crowds and bargaining, about men who watched too closely. He thought about Ravenford and how small it was, and how easily small places could be pulled into larger patterns. Outside, the air cooled. The first hints of autumn were in the wind. The year was turning again, as it always did, patient and unstoppable. Inside, the Longhouse held together, not because it trusted perfectly, but because it kept repairing itself, the same way Bran repaired the ship, seam by seam. Chapter 9. Autumn Harvest and the Tyranny of Lists. Autumn arrived with the quiet confidence of someone who knows you cannot argue with them. The air cooled, the light softened. The wind began carrying that familiar edge that said winter was not here yet, but it was packing. Ravenford reacted the way it always did. It stopped pretending it had time. The fields were heavy with grain and the roots were ready under the soil, waiting to be pulled up like secrets. The Longhouse felt busy from dawn to dusk, not with the frantic fear of winter, but with the sharp urgency of preparation. Autumn was the season where a household did math with its hands. Liv stood at the centre of it all, not because she wanted attention, but because attention refused to survive without her. She had lists, not written lists because parchment was precious and ink was a luxury, but lists that lived in her eyes and moved into her voice with calm certainty. Today, she said one morning, we cut and bind the barley, then we bring in the roots, then we check the stores, then we start drying and salting, then we keep going until winter decides we have done enough. Eric nodded like he understood, then immediately asked, when do we rest? Liv looked at him. In spring. Hilda smiled softly. He asked anyway, that is brave. Bran was already outside, checking rope and sharpening tools because harvest blades were honest. They did not care about pride. They only cared about angle. Owen pulled on his cloak and stepped into the field with a sick in hand. His body felt different than last winter, stronger, less frantic. He still wanted approval, but he had learned that approval was not a single warm bench. It was steady trust, earned slowly, and usually while you were sweating. Sten worked beside him, quieter than before, but no longer broken by shame. Sten had spent summer earning his place back through reliability. He did not speak much, but his work spoke plenty. The harvest began with the sound of cutting, a soft steady rhythm. Stalks fell, bundles formed, hands moved, backs bent, and the field changed shape as if it was being shaved down. Hilda worked too, binding sheaves and talking, because Hilda could do both at once. She kept her voice gentle, bedtime calm, but her words still carried the small sharp edge of humour that kept the day from feeling endless. If you cut slower, she told Owen, the barley will grow back out of spite. Owen replied, if you talk more, the barley will beg for silence. Hilda smiled. The barley loves me. Bran called from nearby. The barley does not love anyone. It is barley. Eric walked the field edge, doing the kind of work that made him look helpful. He carried bundles when someone handed them to him. He gave encouragement that sounded important. He also tried not to get in Liv's way because he had learned that autumn was Liv's season. By midday, the sun sat low enough to remind them that the year was turning. They ate bread and dried fish in the fields, sitting on the ground, laughing quietly at nothing, because laughter was a tool too. Father Alden joined them for a while, leaning on his staff, watching the work with the calm of a man who no longer had to prove anything with his back. You look tired, Owen said. Father Alden nodded. It is one of my hobbies. Hilda asked, will you tell her a story while we eat? Father Alden smiled faintly. A story is easier when the mouth is busy. If I speak now, you will choke on bread and blame me. Owen said, That seems fair. Father Alden replied, It is not fair, it is accurate. They finished eating and returned to work. Autumn did not negotiate. Autumn simply waited for you to stop and then punished you with weather. After the grain came the roots. People moved to the root patch, digging and pulling, hands in soil, fingers numb from cool air and damp earth. Carrots, turnips, and other stubborn vegetables came free with a soft sound that felt like relief. Liv supervised sorting. Good ones here, damaged ones there. Anything soft goes into the early eating pile, because winter did not reward optimism. Eric tried to help and accidentally stepped on a basket. Hilda watched and said, The ground is fighting back. Eric lifted his foot and looked offended at the basket. That was not my fault. Liv raised an eyebrow. The basket disagrees. As the day ended, the longhouse filled with harvest smell, earthy and sharp, mixed with smoke. People brought in bundles and baskets. The interior became crowded with food and fatigue. Autumn night fell earlier now. The fire became more important again. The rafters collected smoke like always, but the smoke felt less annoying when you were cold. Liv began the next phase immediately because Liv did not enjoy surprises. Preservation, drying, salting, storing, and the constant low hum of calculation. She turned the longhouse into a quiet workshop. Fish were split and salting. Meat was cut and hung. Roots were cleaned and placed in cool storage. Grain was threshed and winnowed. Even the children were given small tasks, like carrying light bundles or keeping watch for animals trying to steal. The goats tried anyway. Bran caught one with its nose in a basket and said, If you eat that, you work in the field tomorrow. The goat stared at him with complete disrespect. Hilda said, The goat will not be threatened. It has no shame. Father Alden added, The goat has achieved a level of freedom we can only admire. Owen found himself working late, hands busy, mind steady. He salted fish, turned racks, carried grain sacks, and listened to the sounds of the longhouse. It was not peaceful exactly, but it was held together. That was the real magic. Not the fire, not the ship, not the trade, the holding together. On the third day of preservation work, a small tension sharpened. It began with the tool chest. The chest had become a symbol since winter. It was no longer just a container, it was a statement, a promise made of iron. People checked it often, sometimes without admitting why. That morning, Bran opened it to grab a blade for cutting rope. He paused, then frowned. Hilda, he called, voice tight. Hilda looked up from a bundle of wool. What? Bran said. Count the small drill bits. Hilda blinked. Why? Bran replied. Because I think someone has been borrowing again. The longhouse went quiet in that particular way it did when everyone wanted to pretend they had not heard, but everyone had. Liv stepped in immediately. What is missing? Bran lifted a small tray from inside the chest. One of the fine bits, the one we use for careful work. Owen felt his stomach tighten. What again? Sten's face went pale. He shook his head once, quickly, as if trying to shake off the memory of winter. Not me, he said, and his voice came out rough. Liv did not accuse him. She did not even look at him for blame. She looked at the whole room, calm and steady. We will not repeat winter, she said. We will handle this without turning into wolves. Father Alden murmured, Wolves would be more organized. Liv ignored that and continued, Who used the fine bit last? Silence. Hilda raised a hand slightly. I used it 2 days ago. I put it back. Bran said, Everyone puts things back. That is the song. Then the verse ends with missing metal. Liv said, We will not shout. We will think. Eric stepped forward, trying to help. We should search. Liv shook her head. Not yet. We will watch. We will ask questions calmly. We will look for patterns. Hilda's eyes narrowed. Patterns. Father Alden spoke softly. Patterns are just habits wearing different clothes. Liv looked around the room. If someone took it to help their household, speak now. We can solve needs without stealing. No one spoke. Bran muttered, Needs. Always needs. Owen watched faces. He hated that he was doing it, but winter had trained him. He saw discomfort, guilt, annoyance, fatigue. He did not see a clear thief. He saw humans, which was worse. That day, Liv quietly adjusted. She placed the tool chest near where she worked, not hidden, not guarded like a treasure, just present, like a reminder. She also sent Owen on small errands that let him observe without looking like he was observing. Carry this grain there, bring this salt here, check the drying rack, speak to Ellen, speak to Tom. Ellen lived in the Longhouse with a small child, a girl named Wren, quiet and often tired. Ellen had kind hands and a careful voice. She was the sort of person who made herself small so she did not take up too much of the world. Owen approached her near the root baskets. "Ellen," he said, "Liv asked me to check if you need help with storage." Ellen looked up, startled. "Oh, no, I am fine, just sorting." Owen nodded, then hesitated. "Is Wren well?" Ellen's eyes flickered. "She is, mostly." Owen felt a small cold prick under his ribs. Mostly was a heavy word. That evening, as the Longhouse settled after work, Hilda moved quietly through the benches, listening. She did not pry like a thief. She listened like a weaver, catching threads that were already loose. Later she murmured to Liv near the fire, "Not everyone is stealing for pride?" Liv's eyes stayed calm. "I know." Hilda nodded toward Ellen. She has been trading small things lately. Not loud. Quiet. Like she does not want anyone to notice. Liv did not react sharply. She simply said, "Then we will notice kindly." The next morning Liv asked Ellen to help her with salting fish near the fire, a task that looked ordinary but placed Ellen close to Liv's steady presence. They worked in quiet for a while, then Liv spoke softly, in a voice that did not accuse. "Ellen," she said, "your child has been tired." Ellen's hands paused. She swallowed. "She is small." Liv nodded. "Many children are small, but this is different." Ellen's eyes filled with the kind of fear that tried to hide behind politeness. "She has a cough that will not leave," Ellen whispered. "At night, she struggles. I have tried herbs, I have tried warm broth, I have tried keeping her closer to the fire, but the smoke makes her worse." Owen listened from nearby, pretending to focus on a rope. His chest tightened. Liv kept her voice low and steady. "What do you need?" Ellen looked down. "Salt. For broth. Clean cloth. And a small tin of balm I heard a trader had. Mara had it once. I could not afford it. I thought I could trade for it if I had something small and useful." Liv's gaze stayed gentle. "So you took the drill bit." Ellen flinched as if struck by the word took. "I borrowed it," she whispered, "just for a day. I was going to bring it back. But a man from the coast road said he could trade me balm for it. He said he had a cousin in the next hamlet who knew healing." Bran heard the last part, and his jaw clenched. "The coast road again." Ellen's eyes widened, fear rising. "I did not mean harm. I just wanted my child to breathe." The Longhouse stayed quiet. Even Bran, for once, did not speak immediately. There were moments when anger had to wait. Liv reached out and placed a hand on Ellen's wrist, steady. "You should have asked." Ellen's voice cracked. "I was ashamed. I did not want to be a burden." Father Alden spoke softly from his place near the fire. "Shame is a greedy thing. It makes you pay twice." Ellen lowered her head. "I know." Liv asked, "Where is the bit now?" Ellen swallowed. "I gave it to him yesterday. He said he would return with balm by night. He did not return." Bran's voice came out low. "He robbed you." Ellen's shoulders shook. "Yes." Owen felt anger rise, but it was not aimed at Ellen. It was aimed at the road, at the men like Rask, at the habit Mara had warned about. Men who found weak places and pressed. Liv took a slow breath. "Ellen, we will help Wren. We will not let her struggle alone. But you will not steal from the house again, not even for love. Love does not make theft cleaner. It only makes it sadder." Ellen nodded quickly, tears on her cheeks. "Yes." Bran finally spoke, controlled but sharp. "We need that bit. It is not just metal. It is time. It is repair. It is winter preparation." Liv nodded. "We will try to get it back." "Owen, Eric, you will go to the next hamlet today. Find the man if you can. Ask calmly. Do not start trouble. Bring the bit back if it is they. Eric straightened, relieved to have a task that felt like leadership. Yes. Owen nodded, already moving. Yes. Hilda added quietly. Ask about balm too. We will not leave Ellen empty-handed. Bran glanced at Hilda, surprised. Hilda shrugged. I can be sharp and kind. It is a skill. Father Alden murmured. It is also annoying. Hilda smiled. Thank you. They left within the hour. The road was damp, the wind cool, and the sky carried that pale autumn light that looked lovely until you remembered it meant shorter days. On the way, Eric muttered, Why do people keep doing this? Owen replied, Because they feel trapped. Eric frowned. We all feel trapped sometimes. We do not all steal. Owen looked at him. You have never had a child who cannot breathe. Eric went quiet. That was rare. Owen almost felt guilty for winning, then reminded himself that this was not a game. At the next hamlet, they asked carefully. A man with a limp had passed through, yes. He had talked too much, yes. He had offered a healing balm, yes. But he had not stayed. He had moved on, heading south, chasing the next easy trade. Eric's jaw tightened. He is getting bold, a local woman said. He calls himself Rask sometimes. Sometimes he uses another name. He changes it like Boots, but he always limps and always smiles like he is about to take something. Owen felt heat in his chest. We know him. They could not catch him. The road had too many paths and he had too much practice. They returned to Ravenford with news but no metal. Liv listened, then nodded. Then we replace it. We will trade honestly for another, and we will watch our chest like adults. Bran grunted, annoyed but accepting. Fine. Liv turned to Ellen. We will also trade for balm. We will not wait for a liar to return. Ellen's eyes filled again, but this time with relief. Thank you, she whispered. Liv replied, You will repay the house in work when you can, not because we want punishment, because shared help works both ways. Ellen nodded. Yes. That night, Father Alden told a story that sounded like it had been waiting for this moment. He spoke of a household that locked its tools and still lost its trust because trust could not be latched. He spoke of a mother who hid her need until it grew sharp enough to cut others. He spoke of a traveller who promised healing and sold only hope. He kept the words soft and safe, bedtime calm. No gore, no harsh threats, just the gentle weight of truth. As he spoke, the Longhouse settled into a quieter understand. Sten watched Ellen with a face that held sympathy and regret. He understood what shame could do. He also understood that the road would always test weak points. Owen lay on his bench later, listening to Wren cough softly near the fire, listening to Ellen murmur comfort, listening to Liv move quietly, checking cloth, checking water, checking everything that could be checked. The year was turning again. Autumn was almost done, winter was almost here, but the Longhouse had food in stores, it had tar and nails, it had a repaired ship pulled up and covered. It had people who had learned, slowly, that pride was expensive and kindness was practical. The drill bit was still gone, and that mattered. But the larger truth was clear now. Some theft was not greed, some theft was fear. Fear still had consequences, but it also deserved a hand, not a boot. In the dark, Father Alden's voice faded into the firecracker. Smoke curled above. The Longhouse breathed, crowded and stubborn, preparing for the next season with tired hands and a quiet refusal to fall apart. Chapter 10. First Snow, Preparations, and a Quiet Verdict. The first snow came the way it always did, like a reminder delivered without kindness. It fell in the night, light at first, then steadier, dusting the yard and the roof and the shoreline rocks with a pale layer that made everything look clean. It was a trick, of course. Snow always looked clean while it was arriving. It waited until you tried to walk through it before it showed its true character. In the morning, Ravenford woke to the soft, bright world and reacted with the same old surprise, as if winter had been a rumour and not a seasonal habit. Eric stepped outside, looked at the snow and sighed dramatically. Already. Liv stepped outside behind him, looked at the snow and nodded once. Right on time. Eric frowned. It is early. Liv looked at him. It is never early. It is always when you are not finished. Eric opened his mouth, then closed it. He had learned that arguing with Liv about seasons was like arguing with the tide. You could do it, but the result would be you getting wet. Inside the longhouse, the smoke returned to its favourite height, low enough to remind everyone it existed. The fire burned hotter now, and the benches filled earlier in the evening. Autumn had been busy. It had fed them, but it had also worn them down. Winter did not arrive to kill them. Winter arrived to see if they had done their homework. The stores were fuller than last year. Grain sacks sat stacked and tied. Roots were packed in cool corners. Salted fish hung in bundles. Meat was dried and smoked. There was still work to do, always, but the house had a foundation of food which was the closest thing to comfort a Viking Longhouse could offer without laughing. The ship sat pulled up and covered, its seams sealed, its wood resting. Bran checked the tarp every morning like it was a child that might wander off. He did not admit it, but he loved the ship in a way he did not love people. The ship was honest. It did not talk. People, unfortunately, did. The missing drill bit still haunted them, but Liv had already turned that problem into a plan. The day after Owen and Eric returned from the hamlet with no metal, Liv sent a message through a passing traveller. 2 days later, another traveller arrived with a small package wrapped in cloth. It was a fine drill bit, not the original, but good enough. With it came a small tin of balm, faintly scented, the kind that looked humble but carried a promise of comfort. Ellen nearly cried when Liv handed it to her. Liv did not make a speech. She simply placed it in Ellen's hands and said, "Use it." Wren, the child, lay near the fire, cheeks flushed, eyes tired. Ellen applied the balm carefully and gave her warm broth with salt. Wren still coughed. The cough did not vanish like a story ending, but it softened over days. The nights became less strained. The breathing became less of a fight. That was the thing about real life. It rarely offered miracles. It offered small improvements you had to notice on purpose. Hilda noticed everything. She was the first to point out that Wren's colour looked bettered. She was also the first to point out that Ellen looked like she had slept, which was even more rare. "You look less haunted," Hilda told Ellen one evening. Ellen managed a small smile. "Thank you." Hilda added, "Do not steal again." Ellen's smile faded. "I will not." Hilda nodded. "Good. We prefer our drama in stories, not in the tool chest." Sten heard that from his bench and lowered his gaze. He had not stolen since winter. He had worked. He had kept his head down. He had done everything asked without demanding applause. But shame did not leave quickly. Shame liked to sit down and get comfortable. One evening, as snow kept falling outside, Liv called the household together. Not a formal thing, not a grand gathering with law speakers and banners. Ravenford did not have time for theatre. It had time for decisions. People settled on benches, closer to the fire now, because winter had reclaimed its favourite space. The goats tucked themselves near warmth. The dog moved only enough to avoid being stepped on. Eric stood because Eric always stood when a meeting happened. Standing made him feel like a leader. Sitting made him feel like a man being judged. This was a personal weakness, but at least it was consistent. Liv did not stand. She did not need to. She sat near the fire with hands folded, eyes steady, looking like the calm centre of a storm that had decided to behave for a few minutes. Father Eldon sat nearby, staff across his lap, eyes half amused. He enjoyed meetings the way a man enjoyed watching waves. They always returned. They always hit the same rocks. Bran sat with arms folded. He did not enjoy meetings. He tolerated them like smoke. Hilda sat with wool in her lap because Hilda refused to waste time. Even a household judgment could be improved with better thread. Owen sat one bench space closer to the fire than last winter, which still felt like an achievement. He tried to look calm. He failed slightly. Sten sat one bench space closer too, no longer at the door. He looked tense, as if he expected a verdict to land on him again even though winter had already done its worst. Ellen sat with Wren near the fire, applying balm when the child coughed. The sound of the cough was quieter now. That mattered. Liv spoke first, because Liv always spoke first when it was important. "We are going into winter," she said. "We have food, we have repairs done, we have a ship that will wait. We have enough to survive if we do not become foolish." Eric nodded vigorously, as if he had made the food appear by sheer confidence. Liv continued. "But we have had trouble this year. Not storms. At war. Not the kind of trouble that makes songs. We have had the kind of trouble that makes a household fall apart quietly." Hilda murmured, "Quiet trouble is the worst kind. It sneaks under the door," Father Alden said softly, "and it does not even wipe its boots." Liv looked around. Tools were taken, not once, but more than once. A promise about a bench became a thorn. People traded in secret, and men on the coast road have learned that households will hurt themselves before asking for help. Bran grunted. "Because people are proud." Liv nodded. "Yes. Proud, hungry, afraid. All of it." Eric lifted his chin. "We handled it." Liv looked at him. "We survived it." That is different. Eric did not like that. He also could not argue. Liv turned slightly toward the tool chest near the wall. It sat heavy and quiet, freshly reinforced with a better latch that Bran had made from spare iron. It was not perfect, nothing was, but it looked less vulnerable. "From now on," Liv said, "the chest has a keeper. One person holds the key, one person checks the count at the end of each day, and the keeper is responsible for lending tools out and getting them back." Bran raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Liv looked across the fire at Sten. The Longhouse went still. Sten's face drained of colour. "Me." Liv's voice stayed calm. "Yes. You." Bran made a sound that could have been a protest. Liv held up a hand without looking at him. "Hear me first." Sten swallowed hard. "Liv, I do not deserve that." Liv nodded. "You do not deserve it. That is why you need it." Sten stared, confused. Liv continued. "You know what it means to take from the house. You know how quickly it breaks trust. You also know what cold feels like at the door when no one wants to look at you. If you are the keeper, you will guard the chest like it is your chance to be human again. That is the point." Hilda smiled softly. "That is cruel and kind at once. Impressive." Father Alden murmured, "Trust is not a gift, it is a rope. You give someone an end and see if they hold on." Eric looked uneasy. "Are you sure?" Liv looked at him. "I am not sure. I am choosing." Bran shifted. "If he fails." Liv replied, "Then we change. We will not be trapped by pride again. We will adjust." Sten's eyes shone with something that was not tears yet, but close. "I will not fail," he said quietly. "I will count every piece. I will guard it. I will bring it back if it leaves. I will not let another Rask laugh at us." Liv nodded once. "Good." The Longhouse exhaled slowly, like a room releasing a held breath. Liv turned to the second problem, the one that had been pretending to be small all year. Benches. Owen's chest tightened. He tried to look neutral. He failed again. Eric cleared his throat. "We already sorted that." Hilda muttered, "For now." Liv said, "We did not sort it, we managed it. There is a difference." Father Alden added, "Like smoke. You manage it. It never leaves." Liv looked along the benches. Winter makes benches matter. Who sits where decides who freezes and who does not. We will not pretend it is fair because we say it is. Eric opened his mouth to defend himself, then stopped, remembering last winter. He looked tired. "Fine," he said. "What do you want?" Liv said, "A system. Simple, clear, not based on who shouts the loudest or who Eric promised something to when the harvest made him sentimental." Owen winced. That was accurate. Eric frowned. "I am not sentimental. Hilda smiled. You are when the stores are full. Bran muttered, and when people are watching, Liv continued. We rotate bench spaces by season except for elders and sick children. Those stay closest to the fire. Everyone else moves according to contribution and need, not according to pride. Eric blinked. Rotate. Liv nodded. Yes, it prevents ownership, it prevents resentment. It forces us to remember that the bench belongs to the house, not to our egos. Owen felt disappointment flicker. He had wanted the bench to be his prize forever. Then he heard Liv's words again and understood the deeper thing. If benches were not owned, promises about benches were less dangerous. That mattered. Bran asked, What about shipwork? Liv replied, Shipwork gets recognition in summer. In winter, fire gets recognition. That is reality. Bran looked unhappy, which meant the plan was probably fair. Hilda said, What about people who do quiet work, like weaving, like salting, like watching children? The work no one notices until it is missing. Liv nodded. That work counts. We will not worship only the loud jobs. Hilda looked pleased. Rare. Eric shifted. And who decides contribution? Liv looked at him. I do, and Hilda helps. And Bran speaks for shipwork. And Father Alden speaks for what matters when tempers rise. Father Alden smiled faintly. That is a heavy job for an old man. Liv replied, You already do it. Now we say it aloud. Eric sighed. Fine. Rotation. Owen swallowed. Does that mean I could be near the door again? Liv looked at him. Yes. It also means you could be near the fire again. It means you learn that comfort comes and goes and you do not become cruel when you are warm or bitter when you are cold. Owen nodded, quieter now. Yes. Sten spoke softly. It is fair. Bran glanced at him. Do not say fair unless you mean it. Fair is a word people use when they want something. Sten met his eyes. I mean it. I do not want a bench. I want to not be the kind of man who trades the house away for a better seat. Bran looked at him for a long moment, then grunted. Good. Liv turned to Ellen, her voice gentle. Ellen, the house will help you with Ren. You will not have to hide need again. You ask, we answer if we can. That is the agreement. Ellen's eyes filled. I will ask, she whispered. Hilda added softly, Ask me first. I will tell you what is available, and if it is not available, I will tell you who to glare at. Ellen gave a small laugh through tears. Thank you. Father Alden looked around the longhouse, voice steady. This is what a household is. Not perfect, not pure, just people choosing to stay together even when they annoy each other. Eric said, We are good people. Father Alden smiled. You are people. Good is a daily decision. Eric did not love that, but he accepted it, because winter was not the season for arguments that went nowhere. The meeting ended without cheers. Ravenford did not cheer. Ravenford nodded, then went back to work. That was the quiet verdict. Tools would be watched, benches would rotate, need would be spoken aloud, pride would be managed like smoke. Over the next days the new routines settled in. Sten became the tool keeper. He carried the key on a cord inside his tunic like it was a sacred thing. He counted at dusk. He asked for tools back with calm persistence. He did not threaten, he simply stood there until the tool returned, which was its own kind of threat. Owen watched him and felt something shift. Sten was not forgiven in a single moment. Forgiveness in a longhouse was not a river. It was a slow thaw, but Sten was building a new shape day by day, and the house was letting him. Ellen repaid the household in work when she could, salting fish, mending cloth, helping with storage. She did not try to overwork to erase guilt. Liv did not allow it. Ren needed her mother more than the house needed extra hands. Ren's cough softened further. Some nights it still returned, but less fierce. Ellen slept more. Her face looked less tight. When a child can breathe, the whole longhouse breathes easier. Outside, snow kept coming lightly, then stopped, then came again as if winter was testing the door latch like the wind used to. One evening, a traveller stopped by Ravenford. Not Gareth this time, but a man named Hugh, tired and hungry. He brought news and asked for warmth. Liv offered stew and a place by the fire. Eric offered a greeting that sounded important. Bran offered a suspicious stare. Hilda offered a question disguised as kindness. Hugh spoke of roads growing harder, of small hamlets already sealing themselves in for winter. He spoke of a limping trader who had been chased out of a place farther south for trying to sell healing balm that turned out to be rendered fat and herbs that did nothing. Rask, Owen thought, feeling a small flare of anger. Liv's expression did not change much. That is what happens when a man builds a living on other people's fear, she said. Eventually, someone gets tired of paying. Hugh nodded. He said he will not return north for a while. Bran muttered, Good, let him freeze somewhere else. Father Alden glanced at Bran. You are warmer when you are angry. Bran replied, It keeps me alive. Later that night, after Hugh had settled, Father Alden cleared his throat and began the final story of the year. The Longhouse quieted the way it always did when he spoke, not because he demanded it, but because his voice carried the calm that helped people sleep. He told a story about a Longhouse that thought its enemy was winter. The house fought winter with bigger fires and thicker cloaks. It fought with bravado and loud speeches. It believed strength was the answer. But the true enemy was not winter, Father Alden said. The true enemy was silence. Silence about fear, silence about need, silence about mistakes. Silence turned small cracks into splits. In his story, the Longhouse survived not because it was the strongest, but because it learned to speak. A man admitted he had taken something. A woman admitted she was afraid for her child. A leader admitted his words could be careless. A household admitted it needed rules that did not depend on moods. It was not a heroic story, that was the point. Owen listened and felt his eyelids grow heavy. The fire crackled, smoke drifted upward in soft curls, the goats shifted and sighed. Eric sat near the fire looking thoughtful, which for Eric was a rare and slightly alarming sight. He leaned toward Liv and spoke quietly. I did promise Owen a better bench, Eric said. Liv nodded. Yes. Eric sighed. I should not have. Liv looked at him, not unkind. Promises are not forbidden, but you make them like you toss bread. You do not check if you have enough for everyone. Eric gave a small grimace. That is fair. Liv raised an eyebrow. Careful. Bran will complain about that word again. Eric almost smiled. I will be better. Liv nodded. That is the only promise worth making. Across the room, Sten sat with the tool chest key pressed lightly under his tunic. He looked tired, but steadier. Owen caught his eye. There was no dramatic apology, no speeches, just a small nod. Owen nodded back. It was enough. Hilda finished a small length of weaving and set it aside, satisfied. She leaned toward Father Alden and murmured, Your stories are getting softer. Father Alden replied, It is winter. Even sarcasm wears a cloak. Hilda smiled. Good. I like you cloaked. You are less drafty. Father Alden made a sound that could have been a laugh. Outside, the snow continued, gentle now, covering old mud, smoothing old tracks. The world quieted. Inside, Ravenford settled into winter again, but with new habits. The tool chest was watched. Benches were understood as shared, not owned. Need was allowed to speak. Shame was not given the whole room. It was not perfect. It never would be. But it was held together. And in a Viking Longhouse, in the season of smoke and shared benches, being held together was the closest thing to peace.